Hey, welcome to Movies Worth Talking About. I am John Carlos, and that asshole that's laughing at me is
Eddie.
I need to start off before we really get into the discussion. I just need a preface because I don't know going into this conversation how Eddie has reacted to these movies. You've never seen any of them, and I'd only seen 1 through 3. So here's what happened. I we'll get to it, but I love 1. I'd only seen 2 or 3 once. I'd never gotten around to 4 or 5. And then you see on Prime, and you see on Tubi that they'd have 1, 3, 4, 5. 2 is made by Universal, so you didn't usually see 2 as part of Prime, or at least free on Prime, and it wasn't available on Tubi. And then I had the itch to revisit the series, and fucking on Tubi they had part 2. They like added it somewhat recently. I got very excited about watching them again, so I message Eddie and I just go, "Hey, I'm really excited. Part 2 is on Tubi, and I would like to. I want to revisit all 5 of these." To which you said, like, "Oh, great, let's do it." And I was like, "Cool." However, I wasn't intending to do a video. I was just sharing my excitement to watch them, which is fine. I'm excited we're doing this video, but I just want to put that out there that if you ended up having a bad time with these, I'm just putting it out there that I never said, "Hey, Eddie, let's watch the Phantasm movies." I didn't ever say that.
Wow. Okay.
I'm just absolving myself of never goading you into this.
Oh my God.
All right. I just have this really bad.
Now.
I have this bad feeling. I'm like, Eddie's not gonna like this.
Oh my God. Okay, with that said, let's dive in, shall we?
Let's dive in. My personal history, we know yours, you just watched it for the first time. No, I saw this, God, when I was like 18 or 19. I rented the DVD, and we'll get into the feelings in a moment, but I really, really, really liked it. They put out a very fun special edition DVD, Anchor Bay, I believe. And like, I have like the edition that came with like the signed poster by Don Coscarelli. I have it framed. I like this movie a lot. And I was always back in that. This comes up a lot in all of our videos. I'm usually like, when it comes to a franchise, I'm usually the asshole who's like, the first one, fuck the sequels. So I eventually watched 2, and I was like, huh. I eventually watched 3, and I was like, huh. And then I kind of meant to get to 4 in the video store I rented them from, because this was back far enough into like the early 2000s when I would go to a video store. That video store closed. And, I wasn't on like the Netflix DVD ordering thing or anything. Anyway, 5 happened, and I still didn't get around to it. No offense to I like Don Coscarelli's other stuff. I grew up liking Beastmaster. I love Bubba Hotep. It just was like, I'll get to it. And this was I'll get to it at age 40. And I actually, as much as I've loved Phantasm, I find myself loving it for different reasons at 40 than I did when I was like 19.
Ooh.
There's sad reasons, but there's still reasons.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
So I love it. We'll get into why. Eddie, tell me, what did you think of Phantasm 1?
Well, before that, I do have a little history with not seeing it, because for the longest time, it's been on the lips of kind of like every other horror fan's whatever vlog, YouTube, best of horror list, like, cult following, Scream Factory, like what have you. I don't even know if is there a Scream Factory release. I say that, but I feel like maybe I just saw the DVD releases.
I forget because when Ravager came out, they put out a 5-film box set, and I honestly
that's it. Okay, I'm okay, sweet. So, but for the longest time, I remember when I had a Netflix DVD mail-in account, it was in there always, and it kept getting bumped down because there was always something I wanted to see more. Because I knew I would get to it. It's one of those things where it's just like, I'm gonna see this. I've heard from too many people that this is like worth it, or it's got a cult following, and a cult following is for like different reasons. I don't always like things that have a cult following, but sometimes I jump right on board and I'm like, yeah, Kool-Aid. But And it was always on your lips. Like whenever we'd have like a movie weekend or even just like a movie night, whatever, it would be a contender. And I think I always chose something else.
Enough that I like stopped even suggesting it. Like I haven't.
I think so. I think you forgot it was on the roster because we have a roster, an ongoing roster that's lasted years.
It'd been going on so long, I forgot that I ever knew you hadn't seen it. That's
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you mentioned it, I was just kind of like, oh, okay. And it's a franchise. We do franchise videos. Yeah, I'm going to do it. Oh. And also like, if we do a video, then it's like, okay, I've got a deadline. It's not like I can keep putting it off because if I would have just been like, oh, maybe I'll check it out on Tubi, then there's so many other things that I have to watch. So this was like a priority. It made the whole franchise a priority. And I have to say with this movie, it was interesting because going into it, just right off the bat, I'll just go to my notes. Right off the bat, I wrote font. Because one thing we've addressed in past discussions is how what ends up becoming kind of the font of the franchise is rarely the font in the first movie. And I'm just kind of like, yeah, red letters say Phantasm. As opposed to big block, crystal, silver, shiny Phantasm letters. Yeah. So I was just kind of like, okay, cool. I started chuckling immediately because I was watching Kathy Lester, the actress who plays the lady in Lavender.
Yeah.
Because I was, first of all, I don't know, I loved, it's 1979, the movie's as old as I am. So I love the fact that I was watching a movie that was beginning with such a kind of, what's the word? Just like a pillar of the genre. Two people, like having sex at night outdoors, like no good can come of this. And I started chuckling also just because the cameras showed that their legs were parallel to one another, yet she seemed to be astride him. And I was like, how long are her legs? But
and little did you know that it all feeds into the dreamlike atmosphere of the movie.
It totally did. But so, I mean, already I was like chuckling and I was like, oh, this is enchanting. This is fun. And then actually, this was the only one. I don't know how many times you got to watch all of these. I know you wanted to watch them all twice. But I only got to see the first one twice. So the first one once, like last week, expected to see all the rest of them like kind of like one a day and then kind of watch them in like little double features for the rewatch and just scribble my notes. Then life happened and it's like, okay, well, I only have time to watch the first one twice now. But after seeing the first
one to watch twice.
Well, especially after watching the entire franchise in chronological order, to return to the first one, things kind of jump out at you. Like, I didn't notice this as much the first time. It didn't strike me the same way. But the fact that it ends with Tommy's the one who's with the lady in lavender, and his death. And here we have two, characters who recur throughout the franchise, Reggie and Jody, and they're both mourning the loss of their friend Tommy because their trio is now a duo. And I'm just kind of like, oh my God, it started with a trio, and spoilers, I won't spoil, but I'll just say it ends with a trio. And so I don't know, just the fact that like a trio was being kind of like broken apart from the get-go, I thought like, what a lovely way into this. So that made me happy. And then, okay, I knew I really liked this movie when Mike was in the cemetery and he was on the motorcycle and then it stalled. And then there's just like little, or whatever. Mm-hmm. And I was just like, I'm uncomfortable. I don't like that. I don't like scurrying things. I didn't even know that they were, like what the height was or anything like that. I just kind of saw like cloaked, shadowy figures in broad daylight. So they just like harsh shadows, just like hiding, ducking behind things. I'm like, I'm uncomfortable. So there was that. And then I loved when he went in to see the fortune teller, the old lady, and her daughter. What I don't understand to this moment is why was she laughing? It really unsettled me. Yeah. Because the whole thing with the box and him putting his hand in it and her just being like, don't fear, don't fear, Michael. Don't fear. I'm just like, I am so into this movie. So yeah, you want to say something?
No, I just that scene is, well, there's, first of all, like we've already, you mentioned, like if you're watching this video, it is presuming you've seen all the Phantasm movies, because we are
Spoilers,
talking about
folks.
them
Sorry.
currently. No, but only this time. I mean, that scene always just kind of confounded me. I think it's meant to confound me.
Sure, yeah.
But something happened between the last year and me watching this movie this time, is that I watched fucking David Lynch's Dune for the first time. Sorry to anyone out there who's like, what? You only saw Dune for the first time? But yeah, it took me a while. I finally fucking saw Dune. So this is the first time I'm watching, like, fucking just like Paul Atreides putting his hand in the fucking box and like, I shall not fear, fears the mind killer. I'm like, holy shit, Don Coscarelli either, you know, the movie was, so clearly at this point he's reading Dune. There is no, I haven't looked up an interview, I haven't researched, but there's no fucking way that Don Coscarelli is not blatantly referencing Dune in that scene. It's fucking impossible.
Yeah.
You can't have do not fear and putting their hand blindly in a box and tell me it's not Dune related.
But also,
like,
what I love
it's like
is
the most famous quote from that movie.
Yeah, but what I also love, in addition to like its homage, is the fact that it works so well for this story. Like, I'll jump ahead because there's a lot of examples of this in the movie. I mean, throughout the movie, it kept just feeding me. That was the thing that I loved the most about it overall, was the fact that I don't remember ever checking out. I don't remember ever kind of feeling a lull. I just remember it was like I was swinging from branch to branch, and every branch was as strong or stronger than the last one. And some of the branches reminded me of branches from before. And I'm like, awesome. And one of them is, because I mean, the box thing was cool in and of itself. But then when he stands before the dimensional fork, I found out in 4 is what it's called. and just tells himself, like, don't fear, Mike. And he puts his hand in, and that's when he actually like peers in and kind of figures out. I mean, again, it creates more questions, but it does also, that's the thing I love about the movie, is the answers only offer more questions, room for more questioning. Yeah, but it's not in that way that disinterests me, or that makes me feel like I'm being strung along, or like the director's just kind of like, well, I don't know, you figure it out. Like, it's whatever you want it to be. I mean, I'm just like, it's rich enough and feels grounded enough that it's exciting, and it makes me just kind of want to watch I knew after I saw it the first time, I was like, regardless of how I feel about the rest of the franchise from here on out, I had no idea. But at this movie I will own. This movie I will rewatch and mine. And I only hope that like what comes up afterwards is somehow, I don't want to say worthy, because how often is that the case with, you know, most sequels, but is at least connected and is develops what has already been laid. And I didn't even know what that meant at the time, and then well, we'll get there, but but sorry, yeah.
No, just if we're going back to that box scene, just the thing that, I mean, I don't know, it's always one thing watching it the first time.
Yeah.
But once you know that either all of what you've seen prior to the ending or most of what you've seen is a dream.
Yeah.
I mean, the movie, I mean, David Lynch has done a good job of creating what I consider, you know, very dreamlike atmospheres in some of his movies.
Yeah.
But I think Phantasm should come up in more conversations as far as the way some scenes just don't flow at all into the next scene, but like just like dream, I don't know about you, but like dream logics, like my dreams will morph and shift from one thing to the next.
Yeah.
The fact that people underreact to things that seem strange, they seem very accepting of. You know, one could argue that that's maybe just the way they were directed, or that, you know, there's a bits that are missing. But once you know, the movie does a very good job of creating sort of like a trance, a sort of dreamlike vibe. And knowing that of a lot of these scenes, I think probably my favorite example of it is, well, I'm gonna go to this lady's house and yeah, this box is gonna appear. Just be like, whoa, and then put your hand in it. Don't fear. And then he gets up to leave and he puts his money down on it and it just disappears.
Disappears,
And
yeah.
he just like leaves. Whereas again, if this movie took place in a waking reality, one would probably react a little strongly to the box disappearing with your money on it, you know?
Yeah. I also appreciate like the progression though, because he reacted in a more, I guess, typical way when it appeared. Just like the whoa, yeah. But then once it's gone, it's just kind of like, oh well, I guess.
Yeah. But just that whole scene, just the general vibe of it.
Totally. I also, another thing that pays off for me later is just like the in an odd way, I really loved seeing him work on the car initially when he's just like, you know, like under it in the driveway, just working on it. I was kind of like, okay, this kid's like able. I couldn't do it when I was his age. I don't even know what his age is, but his voice hasn't changed. So, and I can't fix a car now, so it tells you. But but I love the fact that we establish him under the car, and there's something. It was almost something intrinsically horror to me, but like a new avenue that I haven't seen explored as much, because it made me think about the closet and the final girl, and you know, like how that's. I mean, it's been used in. Oh, I'm forgetting the name right now. Help me. The mockumentary, and I showed it to you.
Leslie Vernon, Behind the Mask?
Yes. Behind the Mask, The Rise of Leslie Vernon. Thank you. My memory is shit. Everything's written down. But it made me think about, like, they use that, you know, kind of, sorry, folks, but that, like, kind of vaginal reference as to what it is and what the knife is, the phallic reference and everything like that, and what it means when the knife with the man enters the domain of the closet with the girl in it. And there was something, not necessarily that, because I didn't feel like it was sexually related, but just in terms of what I used to key in with when I was a child, when I'd see like Jamie Lee Curtis cowering in the closet and how I was right there with her, and you know, her POV with the arm coming through. I was right there, and there was something about seeing him under that car and the level of comfort that he had. Like, he seemed really at home there. Even when we revisit him later, when he's inside the garage and the thing happens where he starts hearing things and he's asking who's there. He does all of the kind of horror tropes. And it felt so violating to me, because I was watching this kid in his domain, like in his place where there's such a craftsmanship behind mechanics, but the mechanicry of the mechanizing, the fixing of cars and everything like that. It's almost like being a surgeon. So here I'm watching this kid with this ability in his element, and now the solace has been broken. And now suddenly this car, this place where he seemed so comfortable, is a weapon, is something that can crush him, and almost does. I actually, that might be my only criticism about the sequence when the car falls on him, because I got full Spider-Man Homecoming, you know, like he's under the car and he's pinned, and I'm just like, come on, Spider-Man. But then the next thing, we kind of cut to the next scene, and he's just there like pleading with his brother to believe him, which is fine, but I could have done with a little bit more of a struggle and a little bit more of, because I'm so connected with this kid emotionally. I'm so on his side already, and I, compared to where I get later, like I didn't even know, but there was something about that just stood out to me. So I just wanted to share that.
What stands out to me in that scene is that when it falls on him, there's clearly a lack of space. And when they cut to him just like all of a sudden getting pulled out, and again, it just feels like a dream, because in that space you physically couldn't get pulled through. But sure enough, he got pulled through an impossible space. No one seems to think it's weird. We're just gonna kind of underperform that was an impossible task. Like, there's a lot of impossibility in this movie that is very much accepted through the performances that I always thought was the intent. And now I've kind of gone back and read more about how like the production itself was such a weird, long production Like they went and they filmed 9 days, they stopped, they had to go restart filming just on weekends and like constantly rewriting, and they filmed. They had an assembly cut that was like 3 hours long that got whittled down. So like sometimes the disjointed weird vibe could also just be a byproduct of like, oh, we cut a bunch of shit.
Yes.
You know? So
yeah.
Whether that was intentional or maybe it was just a byproduct, in which case that is another little cinematic miracle when like little things happen and create the end result that you can't intend for that to happen. That is an accident.
Yeah.
But it's a
Totally.
brilliant accident. I just want to say, just for the record, I've always had a conflict with it, and this series really has never helped me.
Okay.
Jody looks like a Michael to me, and Michael looks like a Jody. And I always have the hardest time keeping track of who's who, because that little kid looks like a Jody to me. His older brother looks like Mike. He's got a fucking Mike face. And then the irony is, fucking Mike's real name is Mike.
Yes.
But he looks like a Jody. Anyway, I don't know if anyone's ever had that problem, but I look at older brother Jody.
Not once.
Fuck, Jody totally
what
looks
their
like
real
a Mike.
names were, but yeah, that's hilarious.
Mike, you're playing Mike. Got it. Reggie, you're playing Reggie. Got it. But not fucking Jody. Yeah.
Right. Another thing, just because I kept scribbling things, I'm not even going to cover all of them because we'll be here forever. But one thing that I really appreciated was also, it got kind of established a bit early on. It was just Mike with the binoculars, and he's just like, when he first sees Tall Man. And then later in the movie with, when did it come? Oh, it's after they put the dead guy in the ice cream truck, and Reggie says one of my favorite lines, "This guy's not going to leak all over my ice cream, is he?" But Mike says something, I can't remember what is said before it, but he's just like, "You got to be shitting me, man." And then later, when he's fighting because he wants to go along with his brother, he's already come home and he's swigging the beer. After Sally, Susie, and Reggie disappear, and his brother's like locking him in his room, and he's screaming, "Goddamn bastard and son of a bitch!" And my favorite, it wasn't even a curse, but he screams it like an adult, and he's just like, it's guttural, and I can't even do it justice, but just like a "Don't leave me alone," and it's from like the fibers in his vocal cords. And there's something about it that just kind of brought me to, I remembered hearing a lot of people when Stranger Things season 1 first came out, and everybody was like, "Oh my gosh, what a relief. They're finally writing kids like the way kids talk, like they can curse, and they're just like, little adults with points of view and everything like that. They're not just kind of like there to feed the adults the lines and everything," which I thought like, okay. And a lot of people saying like, yeah, like in Stand By Me, or even in, there was another movie I thought of, but there are a lot of movies that they can, I think Goonies, like, but I thought this movie needs to be lumped in with those other ones, because I feel like the groundwork they laid with Mike, I feel like he walked so everybody else could run after this movie, because it's all coming from him. I mean, whether dream state or not, as you're watching it, you're watching an actual little boy deliver these lines with an actual urgency, and they affect me in a very real way, and they make me totally on his side. I'm not worried about him. I want what he wants. I want him on the front lines, and I want him fighting, because he wants to be there. And who is he going to be if he stays back and just lets his brother go out there? What happens if his brother gets taken away from him? We already know how important Jody is to him. So I love that.
I'm glad you brought that scene up, because that's one of my notes.
Okay.
And and you're saying he says it with such urgency, and I'm like, well, if once you know the truth, we know why.
Right.
The thing that I got more out of this as a 40-year-old is just, when I was 19, I hadn't encountered that much death yet. A little bit older, I've encountered some death. Not to mention just in 2020 alone.
Right.
So the fact that so much of the movie, not just thematically, is about death, but also like visually, the language of everything is mortuaries,
Mm,
graves, graveyards. Just the literally the opening shot of the movie is the fucking mortuary in a graveyard.
yeah.
Opening scene of the movie is a graveyard. We cut to the second scene in a graveyard. The movie is, for lack of a better word, is all about death. But
Hmm.
once you know that Jody is dead, um, there, to me, everything that I watch between their relationship isn't the idea of Mike not wanting Jody to leave and
Hmm.
him always following his brother isn't about his brother going away. It's about waking Mike not wanting Jody to leave.
Right, right.
Um, so when he literally picks him up, throws him in his room, and he says, it's not just like, "Hey, let me out" or anything. He says, "You're never coming back, you goddamn bastard. Don't leave me alone." Like those
Hmm.
lines hit me like a ton of bricks. Not just because of the
Mm,
performance, but it really felt like his id. When he's saying you're never coming back, it's because he knows like you
mm,
are, like you can't, you are never coming back. It is a
right.
line that is fueled by the truth of reality and not
Sure.
just the truth of the scene within the dream. Um, in fact, that's the, I mean, I've always sort of understood that it was all a dream, but still about watching it now and just really kind of leaning into the idea of like Mike creating a world, like a little fantasy in a sense,
Hmm.
where Jody isn't dead, but still like this threat of like, but he's going to leave. Like I can't stop that in this dream. Like even in my little escape from reality, the truth of the like if like you can never escape death, and even my fucking sleeping brain won't let that happen. I mean, it's not remotely subtle that the tall man is the figure of death in this movie.
Mm.
He's quite literally taking people from their grave. He's taking people away to another world.
And
um
modifying whatever we
yeah,
recognize them as into something else. Granted,
he has already taken their parents away,
right.
physically away. He is now coming for his brother, and there's even a line he mentions like, first he came for mom and dad, and then he came for Jody, and now he's after me. Which,
Uh-huh.
I mean, in the true of the world, especially the idea of the. I remember the first time I saw the ending where it's all a dream, but then he goes upstairs and the tall man's there, and you're like, huh?
Yeah.
And I just, but now I just,
Oh.
but now I just wholly accept that that's just that whole scene is the manifestation of you cannot escape death. Like death for both Mike, like he is gonna keep coming for you.
And that keys into something that has always attracted me to horror, particularly the slasher franchises where, killing the unkillable, which
Mhm.
wants to kill you. And you can't ever kill it, but you can defeat it. Like you won't like ultimately win the war, maybe ever, maybe nobody will, but you can win this isolated battle, this kind of
Yeah.
bout of fisticuffs, if you will. But okay, I have a question for you then, because you've obviously had a lot more time with this, particularly this first movie, for it to brew and for things to occur to you and everything. Because I'm still, I mean, I just watched everything this past week, literally most of it yesterday, and that's it. Um, so, so it's like, uh, there's a tendency to take a lot of things. I wouldn't say literally because I don't know how you would, but I mean, just like it hasn't brewed yet. There's still a lot of things that I know I might get later. But one question I did have for you in terms of just this movie, we can talk about the sequels when we get to them. But as far as just
Yeah.
this movie, when this was your only experience with it, what did you believe the tall man's objective with Mike was? Did you believe that he wanted to capture him the same way he wanted to capture everybody else and he would suffer the same fate? or did you believe there was something else going on there?
Yeah, well, yeah, not counting the sequels. It always felt, because I mean, if he just wanted to capture him the way he captured anyone else, it feels like he would. Didn't it always feel like they're maybe not something as epic as what we come to find in 3 and 4, but it did always feel like there was a little something extra that this old man wanted with this boy.
Okay.
I always just chalked it up to maybe it's because like I saw you spying, because he like I did. I knocked you off the bike. I blipped you off. You're snooping around. Not everybody else that he's taken has snooped around the mausoleum. You know, there's something.
Right.
Even if it was just I want to make you suffer a little more. I want to torment you a little more. But yeah, the fact that he is stalking him around his house, talking through to him telepathically at one point.
Oh yeah.
It made him, yeah. And that to me was also a little eerie, just because like, well, what does he ultimately, is it taunting? Is there a purpose? I don't know. It's fucking creepy though.
Well, I mean, I didn't realize the first time I watched it.
And honestly, and I will say, when you watch, I don't think when they're making one, his objective in 3 and 4, I don't think that is something that gets cooked up to me later in the series. And I think his intentions with him in 3 or 4 also come after time. I don't think that is part of his goal in part 1 whatsoever.
But the only thing that made me really kind of like want to know, I wanted to know the first time. I was just kind of like, what do you think? But then the second time I really wanted to know, because like I said, I didn't notice the first screening. I did the second one today. How much of the movie is Mike going to the mausoleum and then going home and then going back to like the cemetery or the mausoleum and then going home.
And he tells Jody, and then Jody goes and then comes back.
And then he goes after him, or then he gets abducted and then he gets taken back. And that just, I didn't think it didn't strike me as like a failing of the script or a lack of inventiveness, the way I think, you know, somebody who this movie might not resonate with might see it, but might see it as just like, you know, well, they just needed action and they had 2 locations, so they just kept them going. But I didn't feel that way. No. I felt because I know there are naysayers about, you know, this movie, but
upon repeat viewings, I did become very aware of like, well, Mike goes there and he comes back, and then he goes there and he comes back, and then he's done Jody and they come back, and they keep kind of going and freaking
I don't know what they're called, but I've dubbed them suck balls, and I will call them that until the day I die. But the first suckball kill with the random guy from the coffin showroom that Mike is hiding from with the cigarette lighter and everything, assistant,
or the groundskeeper, or whatever.
And the first exposure we have to like the runny mustard blood, and also I think maybe the first exposure we have to someone who is not I will probably just call them the Cloaked Undead from here on out. I don't like calling them that, but I had well, you know what I thought, because you know, you're
dink dink dink
exactly
dink dink. Yeah.
Like my first note was just kind of like, wow, this dink dink bites, and but I don't feel comfortable for the rest of this discussion in context referring to them as dink dinks either. Something actually happens later that I'm very happy about, but so I'll just call them the Cloaked Undead, because that's what they are. The groundskeeper, or whatever he is, guy, is kind of like also the first exposure we have to someone who I do not perceive to be the tall man, who is not one of the Cloaked Undead. So it's like, okay, so, because I mean, the lady in lavender doesn't count because I think she is the tall man. So, you know, with like a glamour. So this is kind of like the first glimpse of like, well, they don't all look one way, you know? And for the rest of the franchise, it's almost like they kind of take advantage of the fact that they can kind of look any old way, and that comes up later. But I just wanted to address that. I love that Mike becomes little MacGyver with a slug and a hammer and some scotch tape to get out of his room. And there was something about his, again, kind of relating to that adulthood. And maybe it is because ultimately this is about a boy kind of like, I don't know if you want to call it losing his childhood, but certainly having to confront things in adult reality.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean,
Because
I
there's
feel like the Tombstones,
Yeah.
he lost his parents in 77. He loses Jodie in 78. So like, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a harsh reality, kid. Yeah.
Totally. But there's another remnant of that kind of like adulthood in his voice that resonated with me again when after, I believe it's their dad's casket, when they check it and it's empty, and then he sees the suck balls coming toward him. And he just kind of, I can't replicate it because I haven't seen it enough, but I made a note. There was something about the way he delivered this note, like, oh my God. That sounded so adult. It actually reminded me of the actress who plays Christina Crawford in Mommy Dearest after she gets beat with the wire hanger and then is told and then she gets told to like scrub the floor and everything. And Faye Dunaway has that incredible way she backs out of the room like crossing her eyes going like, you figure it out, crossed eyes out. But and Christina's just kind of sitting there amongst all this powdered detergent, and she just kind of looks up, and my sister actually is the one who pointed it out to me. She says this line, Jesus Christ. And she doesn't say it like a little girl. She sounds like a world-weary, full-grown adult. And I got the same vibe from Mike just saying, oh my God, when he sees these suck balls coming for him after he knows his father's body has been abducted, unearthed from its casket. Yeah. So I wanted to point that out.
While we're at it, can I just point out,
go for it.
I probably should have mentioned this earlier back when we were talking about the theme of death and the dreams and what we're working through. I think it's just very telling that like probably back when in that year between their parents dying and Jodie dying, I get the impression that Jodie probably had a harder time dealing with it. Because within the dream, when it comes time to check the casket, Jodie can't bring himself to look.
Right.
But Mike can. And not only can he, but he opens it to see an empty coffin. There are no bodies in it, which just allows me to really like that. Like Mike can accept that his parents are gone, and that Jodie at this point can't. And that seems to me like a remnant of something he brought in from what had happened before. Again, there could be in the other 90 minutes of deleted scenes, maybe something that actually gave more credence to that. But the idea that you're telling me that he has this very kind of adult delivery of things, I'm like, well, he's also ready to accept heavier things than his brother in that moment. I mean, not in the same moment because one does it and then the other does it, but yeah.
Or even just to perceive them on an adult level. Like, I mean, there's something, I don't know about I mean, I believe he can deal with things and that he can accept things and, see them and everything like that. But there's something about just like the mere perception of the threat in front of you and the way your response just comes out of you. And it just felt very grown, world weary to me. Another thing. Yeah.
No, if I remember correctly, I mean, he has a really good, like he just has a good
yes. Yeah, totally. To go into some other characters, I love the fact that Reggie gets to commit maybe his final honorable act with regard to women in the whole franchise, perhaps, when he kind of pops up when Mike and Jodie get reconnected in the mausoleum, and they find out that Sally and Susie got away. They're fine. He helped them, and there were other girls too.
Yeah.
And it didn't click with me because I don't know Reggie that well this first movie, or at least the Reggie of the whole franchise.
Right.
And I'm just kind of like, he let him get away.
No. Yeah. There's Reggie the perv happens in the later movies.
And I was
Reggie's
just like,
not
kind of decent and honorable in the first movie. Yeah. Oh, I really love him playing guitar with Jodie too, when they're just sitting there on the porch and we first see the tuning fork and things like that. I thought that was really cool.
I know that they were Don would be rewriting scenes during the week and then filming on weekends, and it maybe felt like they knew well, we already filmed the stuff with the girls, but like, we don't have time to shoot. Have Reggie say that he'd let them go, you know?
It worked. I didn't need
You
to
know,
see it. Cool.
like, yeah, remember the fortune teller's granddaughter went in the house and then screamed and then we never saw her again? Make sure we mention that there were other girls there too. Oh, okay, there were other girls there
Right.
too. Got it. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it
Felt like
was
a fix.
so much an issue for me in this movie at the time. It wasn't about, I didn't even think like, there's no room for any of the girls in this movie. I was just kind of like, well, I don't really know them that well. I mean, they just kind of show up and they don't take good care of Mike. I mean, it's not their fault, but I mean, you don't hear that there's something outside your car and then just open the door. But anyway,
Right.
I don't, no victim shaming, but, and then they disappear into the night and everything. It's like, well, we never really got to know them that well. So the fact that I know they're safe, I didn't need that, but okay, cool. I'm glad. There was, one more technical thing, because very rarely do kind of like the more the cinematic things like pop out to me, particularly in first viewings, and this one did. It was the use of shadow with Jody and Mike when they were having that conversation in the car. And it was after all that stuff with Jody and everything like that, and Reggie is there. He was outside looking. Reggie was inside using the dimensional fork, trying to figure out what it is and just going with his gut and trusting. And then Jody and Mike, they find each other outside. They end up in the car, and there's just engulfed in shadow. But the thing is, I can't see Mike's face, and Mike has been basically my protagonist for this movie, and I can barely see Jody's, but he's kind of like, part of his face is haloed. Like, he's definitely, I know where Mike is, but Jody is the focus of the scene. And it's probably the bravest he's been in the whole movie, because this time I think he knows exactly what he's walking into. And I don't know, there was just something about giving Jody his moment, giving him the space, because it's rare that I find this in horror movies where anybody but the protagonist kind of gets their moment in the light, as it were. Like, it was wonderful to see, even if it is just kind of, I wouldn't say a figment of Mike's imagination, but, or an element of him, because that even with this first movie, I have a hard time kind of wrapping my head around that because of the way it ends. There's something about it that makes me think like, there are no answers. That's one thing I really loved after particularly the first viewing. I was like, I have nothing but questions. And I just want to watch this over and over again, because I feel like I might develop my own theories about what's really going on. And I might still, I mean, it's interesting where they go and kind of like the answers they come up with, but it'd still be nice to just kind of see like, well, what did I think?
It's
would
more
be going on there.
satisfying. It's more satisfying for me to just watch the first movie and then wonder what next. No offense to the sequels, but like for the highs and the lows, I still prefer just watching that first one and then being like, and then what? And just letting my imagination kind of run with that.
Yeah. And my final note is just, I thought Don Coscarelli mastered the art of the what the fuck of it all, while maintaining not just my interests, but my intrigue. And I was very grateful for that. I just thought, bravo. I was ready for the next movie right away.
Even in the highs and lows of the sequels, I get like, even when, again, you'll get an answer, but then there'll be like 3 new questions. And I still kind of lean in and be like, well, now I'm not upset. Now I just want to keep knowing more. And what the fuck of it all has to be, I mean, attention must be paid to the idea that like, because I know that he had a dream where he was being chased down a long hallway by a silver ball. And that if it ever got to him, it would kill him. That feels like, yes, you put that in a movie and you don't even really explain it. And I watch it and I go, oh, I don't understand. There's a killer. Oh, and there's a ball. Oh my God, what the fuck? The fact that you can sit down and be like, well, there's this guy and he's old, but he's very strong. And there's the little hooded dwarves. And then there's yellow blood, but there's this ball. And you just sit there and go like, what? Who the fuck sits down and cooks all this up? And keeps it interesting. So yes, it's imaginative is not even the right word for it. To sit
Mhm.
there with these kind of leads and this kind of relationship, but then put them into this situation that doesn't rest on any kind of, for the most part, pre-existing horror tropes that I can see. Yeah, sure, there's some beats. You know, he's working on the car, and you hear
Mhm.
noise, and
Yeah.
you wonder what's there. But yeah, I mean, you're looking at this was filmed in '77.
Mhm.
I mean, it's not riding the coattails of the slasher genre. You're
No, no,
filming in
no, no.
'77. You're not following those beats. Um, in fact, I would argue, you know, there are some things that get taken from this. Yeah,
Yes.
I've never done the research, but I am sure Wes Craven watched this and went, "Well, that's how I'm going to end Nightmare on Elm Street. That's how I'm going to do it." So yeah, there's so much originality in here that to me, especially in a genre that can become so unoriginal and lazy when taking other tropes.
Mhm.
The story structure, the atmosphere, the way it scares, this sort of weird trancy sense of dread. There isn't anything like this before it, and there
Right.
is so props to that, but also props to Angus Scrimm.
Oh my heart. Oh
Like
my God.
you see this in a lot of making ofs, but on the Blu-ray they include like a 30-minute like local TV interview with him and Don
Yeah.
Coscarelli. And you always hear about how like Angus Scrimm's actually a really nice guy. But sure, if when you watch him like just in this interview, you're like, wow, what a fucking nice, sweet guy.
Yeah.
And knowing that to have such a performance, I mean, you have your visual icons, you know, and you have your Hellraiser, you have your Pinhead, you have your check-in. There is the Tall Man, you know, there are T-shirts. I
Mhm.
have the action figure,
Right.
but there's not many that all you have to do is just like lift an eyebrow and say one word. But you
Boy.
go to a horror
He's
convention,
oh,
it's iconic.
no, he's
Uh,
wonderful. I'm
and
so sad that
and his silhouette when he's standing in the doorway of their house, or the dream where he's like over his bed. He's not even that tall. They put him in lifts, you know, like.
oh yeah, yeah, yeah. No, but
But I
okay.
love also, I love the way he walks down the street and just
I
his
was
hair,
just gonna say
oh, his
that might
fucking hair and
be
his determination.
yeah, his
That
razor sharp
stop
focus, because then when he oh my God, when he
and
looks,
the ice cream and the
there are
yeah.
movies that try to achieve that nightmarish, like I'm, you know,
Yeah.
going somewhere and now I sense you're looking at me and I'm going to look right into your eyes. And it doesn't
And it
work
doesn't,
all the time. And this one,
and
oh,
it also
so
wouldn't work
good.
if who he's looking at is, there's something about the child. You're a child and there's like an
Yes.
adult and you're out in broad daylight and he knows. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I was
Um,
so impressed with both. I mean, with everybody, I was just so proud of all of them. And then I looked on Wikipedia, and it sounded like Don. I always forget his name. Coscarelli. I'll have it committed to memory in just a bit, kids. Just bear with the old man. But Don Coscarelli basically just like got friends and a bunch of amateurs who were willing to make this movie. So it made it even more remarkable to me that I was watching these performances being achieved and these bonds and these
with
things that were
friends.
evoking,
Yeah.
yes, that were evoking
Although
real, genuine feelings from me. Like, you know, it was
Angus Scrimm,
amazing.
though, I mean, I can't speak so much about some of the other actors, but like Angus Scrimm had spent years on the stage, so he does.
Okay.
Yeah. In fact,
Wonderful.
yeah, he
Wonderful.
has talked about. It's funny because he talks about that transition from performing to the back row
Mm-hmm.
versus kind of bringing it all down. But I'm like, yeah, but you're playing the tall man, so you can still bring that oomph to the back row to a boy that
Yeah. He's like
Yeah.
Karloff and Lugosi. Like,
He
I
is
love
though.
him. He
He
is.
is
He
that
totally
type of
is.
actor.
Totally is. That's why
So would have been at home in a different decade.
I
I'm
will
glad we got
say,
him then, but like
yeah. No, and
he's
I
of
have to
that
say,
ilk.
every time he returned and I saw his face, and I mean, in the subsequent movies, every time, yeah, exactly. I was like so happy because I was so ready for him to scare me again. It was that kind of thing. And It's rare. I mean, especially at this age, you know, it's rare for me to see someone, and especially in horror franchises, it is rare that you have the same actor portraying the same heavy or antagonist throughout like the entirety of the franchise. I'm eternally grateful for. Yes,
he's not wearing a mask. He's not in heavy makeup. It's just man.
A little, you know, like now and then, but lighting, posture. I know they made the clothes, his wardrobe smaller, so he would look a little taller, look a little skinnier. But I mean, it worked.
And then there are scenes where he's with someone else where they'll put him higher in close-ups.
Yes. Fine.
And then you can see when he's walking down the street, he's got these fucking Frankenstein shoes. You know?
Oh, and there's plenty of camera work too, like where it's like a POV up toward him and a POV down at like Jody or whoever it might be. No, so they made it work. But
yeah, it is the NECA cult classics figure of the tall man. One of the pride and joys of my action figure collection. And as the decades go by, I look back on like just how many like more Freddy and more Jason figures they make, and I'm like, it's a miracle we ever got a tall man action figure from NECA. That's just, it comes with two of the little tuning forks, like his base is like the forks, and he comes with the ball, and he comes with a dwarf.
Oh,
great. Oh, that's great.
Yay.
He's so good. I'll use this as a transition to 2. He's so good that like, because you end the movie with boy, but when you end 2 with, because 2 and 3 for the most part take place in the real world. But for the first one ended with the dream, and then the second one you got Mike and God, I can't remember, Liz, was that her name?
Yeah.
I think it was Liz. But like, hey, no, it's okay. This is just a dream. And he's like, no, it's not.
Yeah.
It's almost, I hate to say it, it's almost a bad line. Like, he makes it work 1,000%. He makes that moment work. Because I feel like if I was just reading the script for the first time and I'm like, it's just a dream. No, it's not. And credits. You're like, what?
Oh dear.
Oh, but no, it's not. Oh, he's so great. It's such a fun moment to end on, but he really sells that, especially, because we're in the car, we're happy, we got away, la 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 la, and then the girl, but just no, it's not. Fuck you. This little fucking window.
Well, one of the first things that stood out to me about the second movie was the score, because I felt the score in the first movie, but it didn't. My God. Totally felt it. But the thing is, I didn't remember the phrase. What made me remember it was the second movie, because all of a sudden it went synth. And the reason I remembered it is because I think Harry Manfredini ripped off Fred Myrow and Malcolm Seagrave, who did the score for the first movie. And it's the same theme that repeats throughout the entire franchise. But with the synth, it sounds like Friday the 13th Part 7 to me, the New Blood, like right at the end when Tina and I can't remember his character's name, but Kevin Spiritus, dreamy Kevin Spiritus are sitting there in the back of, like the what is it, the station wagon ambulance or whatever they're in. And he's just kind of like, Jason, we have to get Jason. She's like, we took care of it. You'll just have to trust me. Let the credits roll. And then they roll. But you hear and it's in that synth kind of thing. And I'm just like, when I heard it in Phantasm II, I was like, wait, when did this get released? This got released in 1988. Didn't Friday 7 get released in 1988? Who ripped off who? Because I don't remember this theme from the first movie. And then luckily I got to watch it again today and go like, no, it's Phantasm's fucking theme, motherfucker.
Yeah, no, that theme
and the motherfucker's
rides
me.
Through. No, that theme rides through all the movies.
But even though I felt it, I didn't remember.
I understand.
Like I couldn't.
Mean, yeah.
It was too slow, and it wasn't synthy enough for me to go like Friday 7 in the first movie.
Yeah, once you've been watching the movie for like 20 years, and you know that theme then.
Right, there's that too.
But I love that you felt that score in your heart, in your soul.
Oh my God, yeah. No, I felt everything in the first movie. Okay. Yes.
My response to the second movie is just when you hear that score, in synth form. I just remember this time going, oh, we're in the 80s.
Yeah.
Like, okay. Because it's fun, like you were saying, not only just to have your villain with the continuity throughout the series, your live action villain, not like say a Chucky doll where you still have continuity,
Sure.
but with your also your to a certain degree your trio of leads,
Yes, yes,
and how
yes.
much you get Mike in a movie or not, how much you get Jodie in a movie or not.
Yeah.
It's kind of sweet to go through the decades and realize you spanned 5 decades.
It's like this and Scream, honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And that might get ruined this year.
It might.
Or whenever Scream comes out. I don't remember.
Or like, the before sunrise, before sunset, like,
oh,
we're actually watching time progress
in the horror genre.
In the horror genre, but just but to be able to, it's just sweet in a weird way. By the time you get to like 4, it starts to feel just like family gathering, and like for you, but also for the fans, like it's a family gathering for us to bring the gang back together one more time.
Sure.
Yeah. So
that said,
except for this one, you hear a lot about how Universal didn't want Michael to come back, but I also heard another version where he wrote a script that had Michael and Jodie as the leads, and they're like, look, you can have one but not both, like we can't have 2 unknown people in this, so pick one. And I heard that he's like, okay, I'll pick Reggie the ice cream man, and so I don't know if it was a pick one kind of choice,
or if Universal just said, we want an actor, not your boy.
Want a young guy, who reportedly I read, I think at one point Brad Pitt read for it, which is funny to me because I've never said his name right. James LeGros.
I'd say James LeGros.
Yeah, his character, I think, in Living in Oblivion is supposed to be based on Brad Pitt when he did Johnny Suede. So the idea that Brad Pitt was up for this part makes me laugh.
Can I just say, the second he came on screen, because the first thing I thought was just like, oh, that's not Mike. Hostess Twinkie motherfucker! Anytime I see him in anything, like I saw him in Psycho, the remake. I saw him in anything he's done. He's in everything, but anytime he shows up, I always go back to the Hostess Twinkie motherfucker, because that was my first exposure to him. With Catherine Keener and Steve Buscemi and Dermot Mulroney and Peter Dinklage. Yeah. And I fucking love that movie. So I'm just like, and he's young. I've never seen him like he's a baby in this.
He is.
But actually, the first bout of casting that I kind of took issue with wasn't even him. It was my first note.
Oh no. Is it about
who
Liz?
the hell is this lady?
No, I see, because that's one of the things I liked about this movie is, call me crazy, or do you have more? I
have more, but you can finish your thought, because I have more.
Well, look, I just like the idea that, like, normally if you're going to give me a story about this brother and Jodie and this is happening here, if you tell me this is happening other places, I go, oh, you're not making it as special. But no, I really like the idea that, like, no, the tall man, there's something going on with her, and it turns out there's also something going on with Mike, that like across our country he's got some other pots that are being stirred, or at least there are other people responding to him in a way. It's a hard needle to thread for me whenever you introduce hi, I'm so and so, nice to meet you, I'm Carrie, I have psychic powers or whatever. I think
that's a bitch.
Yeah, no, but like Friday the 13th Part 7, essentially is always kind of dubbed as Jason versus Carrie.
Yeah.
I like Jason versus Carrie in Friday the 13th Part 7. But it can sometimes when you see it in movies, it can feel kind of like a cop out. I find when they like, oh, we're gonna introduce this person, and I don't know, she's telepathic or something. Fuck it. She can talk to someone through their mind. But when you have a whole series that has to deal with dream states, and eventually we really get into the idea of mental connections. The tall man has like kind of telekinetic and telepathic powers, but also the fact that with this movie introducing both Mike and Liz communicating, or both having dreams, but also communicating with each other via dreams, and then later movies not only deal with fucking parallel dimensions, but parallel fucking states of existence. Like, fine, she's a telekinetic, or she's got special dream connections and she can feel things. I'm fine with it. And you catch me up very quickly with her notebook, and I just immediately buy into, okay, you're the lead of like your other story that we didn't see. And now we're going to catch up to you. And it's like, this is our crossover movie, but we never had her movie.
Okay. I'd just like to say I didn't have an issue with any of that.
Okay.
No, it was just the second she came out, because the first thing we see is like that throwback, that kind of like recap of the first movie. And I was excited because I felt like, oh my God, they're showing this for a reason. Like that means we're going to get to see like the same people come back, or something. It's going to be somehow connected.
And then
so
she shows up.
It was just my first response, which is like, who the hell is this lady? And then I was trying to figure out how she's connected to them, because I also wrote, I can't tell, and this is a compliment, I can't tell if she's 14 or 30. Because she's just so kind of ambiguously ageless. And but I love that there was we figured into the aftermath that we went, because that was one thing about the first movie that did kind of like, it doesn't bother me anymore now because it's actually kind of become like a pillar of the franchise. But the first time I saw Mike and Reggie sitting in front of that fireplace and everything, and Reggie's like pledging that he's going to take care of him and stuff like that, I was just like, they're awfully close. Why the fireplace? That's an awfully romantic setting to like have this happen. Am I supposed to be creeped out a little? Because I am. And then I saw them kind of like pick up right where the first movie left off, and it got redeemed for me just because I was like, I kind of worried after the way it ended. I was just kind of like, wait, Reggie didn't hear that? And so the fact that Reggie did, and then he's mega proactive and goes up there and like fights it, and the fact that Mike does survive, even though it's not Mike, it looked like a woman to me. I couldn't tell. If it's a man with just like shapely gams, then I feel bad. But
Eddie, it feels like it's a shorter woman. It's a woman in a wig.
It totally does. But if it isn't, apologies. If you're watching, I apologize.
I just think the way that Hollywood was running back then was like, well, we need someone to be his size. Well, we don't have a lot of size, but we have a lot of women his size.
But so yeah, I totally appreciated right off the bat the special effect of Liz's grandfather's mouth being sewn shut. And I found out after the fact that, well, the reason I'm impressed is because Greg Nicotero and Robert Kurtzman worked on this movie. So fucking A.
Right, which is so great that like, okay, the first movie cost $300,000, so we're gonna put some kids in some brown robes. But this one's like, no, we get to see their fucking faces this time.
Yeah.
It's nice.
I also
give me some Kennedy faces.
I didn't mind. That's the thing, is like usually like maybe if the curtain gets pulled back on something that's mysterious, it's easy to fuck it up. And I didn't feel like they fucked it up. No,
I like seeing the Jawas faces.
We can call them the Jawas. But then I remember Reggie's kind of cynicism troubled me. I was just like, how much of the movie are we going to spend him having to like, he already tried to like twist Jodie's arm in the first movie, so is he going to have to twist Reggie's arm to get him believe in the tall man? And luckily his family blows up and
his whole fucking family.
And I'm just like, okay, explosions. And but now he believes. I love the quadruple barrel shotgun, and I love that it basically lasts the whole. I love that they made it and that they're sitting there, and then after they like kind of craft their because I mean like the seed was planted with his little MacGyver moments in the first movie, and now they're like full on making their artillery. And it's a little more ridiculous, but I don't care at this point, because also I grew up in the 80s. I know what these movies at this era were like, so I'm like, okay, this is a good 80s movie.
And at this point we've already had like Ash and the Chainsaw, so we've had like our male heroes gearing up sort of thing, which is already kind of like the last act of the first movie, and it just feels like they're kind of leaning into that for this sequel.
And I love the fact that they pay. They don't steal any of that artillery. Like, they leave money there when they leave. I'm just like, they're good guys. I love this.
And so much so with this era of like the male gearing up that I don't know if you noticed, but when one of those two caretakers and then Liz and he's grinding up the bones in the end of the movie, and did you see who the name on the bag? It's Sam Raimi.
No, I didn't see that.
So it just feels like I could see like Reggie and Mike and Ash being like kind of cut from the same cloth when it comes
That'll
to
come
this.
up again later. I don't know if you know.
Well, you know, at one point Reggie does fight with a chainsaw.
He totally does. Oh my God, I love
yeah.
it. But I mean, in another way.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yes.
There's another thing actually that it makes them Ash in his own way. He's a lovable version of this, but he's kind of lame. You know, he's a little arrogant, but you know, just like, you know, it's the 90s or the 80s, and he's saying stuff like groovy, like, and especially when you get to the TV series, like,
Yes.
one of the things is how kind of lame and stale he is.
Yeah.
And when we have Reggie going, "You mother," I was like, okay, like I think this is it's lovable, but you know, I think the idea, I don't think I'm supposed to ever 100% buy Reggie as cool so much as Reggie trying to be cool.
Yeah, no, totally. He's a star in his own
And
movie, in his
I've
mind.
never heard anybody say "you mother" and like have it ever land for me.
You need to watch more
Never.
blaxploitation movies.
Well, I was debating whether I want to say I've never heard any white people say it and have it land. Because I have heard it land from other people.
Yeah, totally. I also okay. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I just one of the things that I found structurally interesting about this movie, and all I'm going to say is interesting. But I love the idea that so the first movie is a dream. Some people argue that parts of it are a dream, parts of it are real, but I just like to say, no, the whole fucking thing was a dream until the fireplace scene, or Mike wakes up in bed, and then fireplace scene.
Okay.
But this idea that you have the extension of the attack on Reggie's house, and then Mike is institutionalized for like 7 or 8 years, gets out, and immediately like he's Sarah Connoring that shit. Like, yeah, and I'm all good now. Bye. Immediately goes to dig up graves and prove that this is real. And not only is Reggie there, but Reggie explains like, no, my house didn't fucking blow up, you fucking lunatic. None of that shit happened. And you're like, oh, none of that shit happened. I thought we were like in the real world, but it turns out none of that shit happened. And sure enough, as they're driving to Reggie's house, then his house blows up for real. So at this point, even for the first 15 minutes of this movie, like things haven't actually happened. I think this movie introduces the idea of, and it's certainly solidified in the sequels, but this idea of, especially with Liz having dreams and Mike having dreams, they're not just dreams, they are in a sense premonitions, they are foreshadows. And in that sense, Mike's had a dream involving the tall man, and then him waking up and the tall man attacking him also didn't happen. I got institutionalized for saying all that. But after Reggie's house blows up, the two of them hit the road, and I'm like, wow, like Mike's hitting the road to go after the tall man who he's never, in fact, actually met. In reality, he's never met him. And I just found that so interesting that like, wouldn't it be fucked up if he hit the road and then like never found him because it turns out you're fucking crazy the whole time. But this idea that like you've met him a lot up here, but like in truth, this is like your first time and you are in go mode and like you're hitting the road to go after someone. I just thought that was like, you don't really see that a lot. It's like a revenge movie, a man on a mission movie, but but in truth, it's all based on like dream experiences and not on like an actual thing that's happened to you yet. If anything, it happened to Reggie. Poor Reggie and his family.
Okay. I think I have much, and again, you know, like first time viewing just yesterday for this movie, or actually I think this one was the day before, maybe. But with this whole franchise, I feel like the thing I kind of gravitated toward, because I don't have hugely strong ideas about what I'm watching in reality. What I'm perceiving, and this is actually kind of like very me, this is on brand, is just people who are disoriented by their reality, so they don't know how to react. So they basically are subjected to take things as they come and do the best they can with the knowledge they have at that particular point. So it's looser for me. I don't have such strong ideas about the framework as you do, but that might change with multiple viewings.
Well, absolutely, because again, I've only seen 2 or 3 now twice. And the second time I was just sort of going on the journey and going like, but this time I was really like, especially now that I knew where the story of 2 and 3 went, I instantly was like, oh wait, technically you've never met this dude before. Technically, that's interesting. Like,
all right.
I got just little things out of that, especially, and also I never noticed this when I saw it the second time, but also watching it right after the first one. And the movie doesn't ever really lean into the idea of premonition, but they do lean into this idea that like Liz is having dreams, and she can see she can fucking sketch him with a little heart around him and everything, you know. But this idea that, and if the 5 people who are watching this agree with me, let me know in the comments below, because the movie doesn't really, if it's saying it, it never hammers it at the end. It never really lays it on thick. But I get the impression that, especially if they're sharing dreamscapes, like okay, let me lay this out for you in advance. The end of the first movie, which is the beginning of this movie, right? The quote unquote hallucination or dream that Mike has, that Reggie's house blows up, you know, and then his house blows up. So he clearly can have a dream about something that will happen, and then it happens. If the events of the whole first movie are a dream, when you watch like the second movie, like Liz's experience, like she goes to the mausoleum, they're in a hallway and a ball comes down and gets another guy in the head, and you're like, any other movie, this just feels like kind of like a sequel redoing the beats from the first movie that worked. But in this, like they team up and they go to the thing at the end. At one point, Reggie even like jumps and goes, "Hey guys," and you're like, "Oh, like this whole climax of the movie is very reminiscent of the climax of the first movie." In a weird way, this movie has allowed that first movie to be a dream, to be a foreshadow of the events of the sequel. There are so many beats that happen in 2 that are the same beats that happen in 1. And I normally be upset about it, but I'm not, because they're dream premonitions. And all those beats are now happening for the first time in this reality.
Okay. I can't even wrap my head around that at the moment, because
but next time you watch 2, just notice how many things that happen are like things that happened in 1 structurally.
Oh, I'm sure I will. But just the first time.
And if they didn't have the 2 house explosions, I wouldn't have made that bigger connection. But they're all there.
All right. I mean, I'm not saying that you're wrong. I'm just saying what struck me the most about this movie overall, and I think that might have prevented me from seeing things like that, particularly in a first viewing, was it felt largely uneven to me as far as the ride was concerned. I kept dropping out and then dropping back in. The whole experience was like a Richter scale, like they would pique my interest and then it would fall away. And then my interest would be piqued again by something that happened and then it would fall away. The whole movie was like that. And it was fine. I walked away going kind of like, I think I'm a 50-50 kind of mind of this. And luckily for me, like that's enough. And especially considering the fact that I like the first movie as much as I do, and that so much is, at least tonally and as far as, I guess, canon structure is concerned, carries over into this sequel. It was enough. It was enough for me to go like, okay, I like it. It's not my favorite, and it's not the first, but there were some other things that I could grapple onto, and other things that I actually have questions about, but like for myself that I want to know. Like because if what you say is right, then it just makes me wonder. Then like, where does Father Myers fall into all of that? But before we discuss that,
not everything. Because
Okay.
dreams are different, Eddie. No, but
Whatever.
mostly from Liz's point of view. I mean, hell, the climax is literally the three. It's a cast of three and a cast of three, and they go to a room with a white thing and the dwarves. Like it's
Right.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and I'm not arguing with that, but I'm saying
Poor Father Myers.
Yeah, poor father. Well, the first time he came on screen, I said out loud to myself, I was like, is there a Mr. Gump? Mrs. Gump? Because he looked like Sam Anderson. I thought it was him. And then I looked at, because I was so curious, and I was watching it on Tubi. So of course, there's ads. So during the ad breaks, I mute and I go on IMDb to see, like, is that him? And no, it is Kenneth, either Tiger or Tigar. I don't know how to pronounce his last name. Tigar, as Father Myers. And I was like, but I recognize his face anyway. He doesn't just look like Sam Anderson, who I love from Angel and, you know, a bunch of other things. But he's also the first credit that he has that jumps up on just like, you know, like the suggestions of his career, you know, like his credits. The first credit is the Avengers. Father Myers is the man, the German man who won't kneel to Loki.
Oh my God.
And I was just like, oh my God, I love you. So however long you're in this,
They're like, I've seen men like you. There's no one like me. Like,
and I was like, I love you. And then
there was I've never heard Joss Whedon ever talk about.
I don't think so either. But he's one of those guys who's got like 100+ credits too. So he's been
every
in
once
everything.
in a while you see that kind of stunt casting, and it's like, well, I was a fan of this or something.
All right, totally.
I mean, because J.J. Abrams, I don't know. I mean, okay, so there was Phantasm, and you would watch Phantasm on DVD and all that. But now, God, was it 2015, 2016? They did a massive restoration on Phantasm. Kind of like the way Christopher Nolan's like, I'm going to do a restoration on 2001. J.J. Abrams was like, I'm fucking producing the restoration of Phantasm. He's like, I grew up on Phantasm. I fucking love Phantasm. And when it was re-released in theaters, it had the Bad Robot logo. And in fact, now, like, whenever you watch Phantasm, like streaming, it's not Phantasm, it's Phantasm Remastered.
Right. Yeah.
Thank God, because the restoration's fucking beautiful. But you're always gonna get that Bad Robot logo in front of the movie now.
Cool. I wondered about that. I was just gonna like, oh, maybe it's because it's remastered. But
so I love in that same way that
okay. No, so I love that. I love okay. I just gotta say something.
Okay.
I didn't trust Kemi from the start. When alchemy got introduced.
The completely believably named alchemy. Yeah.
Well, this is the thing.
No, I didn't trust her for a fucking second. And it was funny, they really played her straight for so long. So long.
And the fact, whether it's a fact or a dream fact, I don't give a shit. The fact that in the runtime of the movie, Mike sees her, had a premonition about her, being dead, says she probably shouldn't be around us, and then Reggie's just like, "Oh, come on, you know, I it's been a while," whatever he says, you know. Reggie's got a hard-on for the dead girl, and that's the first time after that, like, I started writing. I think it was when they reached Perigord Manor. Even though I liked the atmosphere, because I didn't like it, but I liked it because I don't like a street lined with houses that are abandoned. It bothers me. That said, that's when it started kind of meandering to me. I was just kind of like, okay, they're searching for stuff again. Like, can we please find it? That's what I'm saying. Like, the first movie with their like comings and goings, it never lost me. Yet in this one, there weren't really comings and goings so much as like an eternal search for the tall man or whatever, and or for answers, like, and then they'd find Liz and I'd be like, oh, my interest is piqued, and then it wouldn't be Liz because she'd have the tall man growing out of her back or something, and I'd be like, okay,
oh, it's not Liz,
it's not Liz,
which is also though,
but he recognizes her, so that's interesting, but now we're just coasting again and I'm bored. And it was like that
is such a fucked up calling card though.
Yeah.
Let me create this fake Liz with the fucking demons creature crawling out of her back.
Yeah. And okay, another thing about Kemi, I'm not done, because I was angry. I really started getting angry at Reggie because I was no tea, no shade, but the fact that Kemi is so into Reg, it should be a major red flag. I feel like it's not about his level of attractiveness, because I think he's got a handsome face.
Because who are you? Yeah.
Yeah. No, and I mean, a few years back, sure, or even just like, I mean, I like looking at his face. I think he's a handsome guy. He actually reminded me of a guy I dated, but he had a little more hair on top, but it's not about that. I like bald guys too.
Is it with Kimmy when she's rubbing his head and she's like, "Oh, your fucking bald head," or is that one of the other?
I wrote.
Okay.
She's like, "God, Reg, I love your head," and I just wrote, "Boom! What the hell was that?" And then I wrote, "No, what the hell was that?"
Don't trust her.
Why are you? And even his face, like he's kind of like,
yes,
I guess I'm into this. It's like, Reggie, trust your instincts, man. Trust your insides are. Oh, and that was another thing. Okay, I think that might be all I have to say about her. But I knew she was no good. Like in the end, I was not surprised. I was like,
when she pulls up in the car, you're like, get the fuck out of here. Even before the reveal later, just get the fuck out of here.
But then once the reveal happens, I'm like, that's why I fucking hate you. Go on.
One little thing that I like though is, he leaves fucking her to go down and attend to something. Right? I forget what happens. But then they run back up and then they have to leave and then they run out of way again. But I just remember thinking at 2 points, he never goes back up and he's like, "Hey, lock the door," or like, "Love you, see you later." Like, no, just like hit it and quit it. Like he doesn't check on her at all during all the shit that happens in the house. In fact, there becomes a slightly recurring little thing in these movies where there's certain characters that are like, "Fuck you, whatever." Like,
yeah, right.
and maybe that's why at the end she's like, "You know what? You didn't fucking check on me." When the tall man was at the fucking window and shit.
I don't think so. I think
when the cat blew up and shit, when the cat triggered the explosion and you left, and then the tall man came to Liz's window and then you fucking left and you didn't even tell me.
But one thing that I'm going to have to examine in future screenings is Father Myers having access to, the mausoleum, the dreamscape aspect of the mausoleum, because I'm just kind of like, okay, I still don't know where I fall as far as the church in and of itself, the chapel where the funeral is happening and where he stabs the grandpa in front of grandma, and grandma faints. Right. And I was like, are we ever going to find out what happened to her, or is it just going to be left like that? And of course we find out what happens to her, and she has a great scare. I love when she wakes up, she's just there, and she just starts, that was awesome. But
the movie has some very traditional movie scares, and they work in a way that they don't really play with in the first movie, but this movie kind of plays in that sandbox a bit and has fun with it, I think.
Yeah, and I also think this was the first one to introduce the gas mask man, who was just kind of, toting one body to another. So it's okay, there's one more who doesn't look like the first guy from the movie who was in the coffin or in the casket, display or whatever. But I was just kind of, okay, cool. One thing that stood out to me also, very 1988, I feel this era of horror. I just wrote censorship with a question mark, because there seemed to be lots of blood irrigating far too quickly. There would be a suck ball to the head, or a suck ball to any kind of body part, and then there would be a cutaway, and then there would just be a pool of blood, and we wouldn't get to see it drain the way we did in the first movie. And it was also with the corpse on the slab, it seemed to bleed out really fast, and we didn't see it bleed out. And Father Myers, the same thing. So I was just like, I feel like there needs to be an uncut blue version of this somewhere.
Father Myers. I definitely noticed that with this viewing.
Oh, and there was also, I don't remember who got a chainsaw to the crotch. Was it Tall Man? I don't remember who it was. Somebody got a chainsaw to the crotch.
No, it was, he has two morticians that work with him.
Right. Okay, so it was one of them.
And
right.
first
and they're
of all,
both attacking.
Fucking okay. If I'm on the fucking work shed or the work desk, the workbench that he's on, if there's a guy standing with a chainsaw, I mean, I don't want to say only in the movies and be that guy, but you can't leap over a chainsaw and not have your dick sawed off. That's the worst way out, is to leap over the chainsaw. Oh my God. But I almost in a weird way feel like that inspired him to be like, oh, I almost got my dick changed. You know what I should do? And
But there was almost no blood from that either. I think it was blood aftermath, but like, so that was another thing I wanted to point out. The only other things I have really pertain to two things. And one is just Liz. I don't even remember this sequence, but I just wrote, I like that Liz held her own with Undertaker guy, but
yeah, she burns the fuck out of him. It's dope.
But it took her a while. I remember, because also then later, this is something a lot of like these movies tend to do with like girls, where they kind of forget they have strength and ability. Because one thing that happened was,
they do.
I wrote, how did Tall Man strap Liz down so fast? Because that happened like 1 minute, like they were running from him, and then they run back, and then all of a sudden she's strapped down. And I'm like, okay, it's a dream, maybe, whatever. But also her arms, and this, I don't care if it's a dream, it looks tacky. She's laying there. There is ample space between the straps and her arms. There is plenty of ways for her to maneuver her arm through them and get him out. It's not like Reanimator levels where there's like a naked girl on a slab and one of her hands is tied down and the other one is free to bat people away, but she's just going to lay there and go, well, you know, a severed head, like, you know, runs his tongue on her body. It's not that bad, but I was just kind of like, I don't buy it. So there's no urgency, and there's not even like a dream urgency. Like, if you want me to have a nightmare, she needs to be freaking out. I need to believe she's incapacitated. She needs to believe she's incapacitated. But she was also just kind of like sitting there placid, just kind of letting it happen, waiting for the guys to save her. And I was like, I've seen it. So this was like one of the dips down on the Richter scale. She does, but still, it's like,
no,
we'll let her be strong eventually, but not,
it takes
like,
time to get to that moment, but they didn't fill that time with anything believable enough to.
She could have basically freed herself, and she never tried.
Yeah.
But I thought the formaldehyde death was fucking cool.
Oh, it was great.
On the Tall Man, I loved it. I was all about it. I was just like, this is beautiful. See, again, uptick. I was like, oh, I'm back in this. Lovely.
Yeah.
You know?
The thing about Liz that I find interesting is that there's something both that I like about the idea of her and also don't. On the one hand, it feels like juvenile in like the way that maybe like a child would have, like, it's something like I would have responded to when I was 10, this idea that there's like this girl out there who like already knows me. And when you meet her, you already have this connection. And I'm like, oh my God, like as like a 10-year-old boy, like that sounds like so low effort and so awesome. You know, and she's like this awesome girl who already loves you, because you see movies and like they fall in love too quickly, but this one's like, well, no, they're sharing dreams and they kind of already not only do they understand each other, but they're kind of being pulled to each other. However, it doesn't come across as juvenile because of the work she puts in. I actually, when they first kind of meet in that little empty grave site, I feel like a weird magnetism between them. So that like, even though like, I think they kiss like pretty quickly.
Yeah, they do. Like immediately. Yeah.
At first I'm like, oh, that's weird, but like they sell it, and speaking of juvenile, they both feel very like childlike in that instance.
They do.
That like, I believe them in that moment. And also speaking of childlike, when they're sharing their dream and they're talking to each other telepathically, and he's like, oh my God, this is so cool. Like he's got this really goofy childlike grin.
Yeah. Yeah.
I like the innocence of their energy with each other.
Let me say, yes, go ahead.
No,
I just want to say I agree with everything you said. As far as their performance and their chemistry and like their childlike whatever, everything, I just don't like it. I felt like it would have been stronger, and I feel like I would have felt this even as a kid. I always kind of felt like it was a bummer when two people are linked somehow, and that means they have to like fall in love. I always kind of I always felt like it was more intimate if they didn't. If they were just kind of like, we're connected, we're linked. Maybe it'll develop that way, but the fact she was drawing pictures of him, I was just like, well, that's interesting. Why? And then when I find out the reason is like kiss in the grave, I was like, I don't like it.
I just figured why, because she's been in his headspace and she understands him, and she's like, oh, and I like who this boy is.
I don't like it. I don't like it.
Fair enough. My bummer is that it felt like they wrote and introduced an interesting kind of new character, and it turns out that the series recurringly will say, whatever new character, fuck them. It's fucking Reggie and Mike, because we end the first movie with Reggie seemingly maybe getting killed, and we open 3 with actually gets up from the street. I'm all right. Kaboom.
And Liz
oh
dies.
My God, Mike and Liz. Oh, Liz is fucking dead. I was like, oh, I kind of like the idea of this is our new trio. We spent so much time with this telepathic link and their bond, only to be like, fuck them, it's Reggie and Mike.
I thought there was a real opportunity, because even though I didn't like it when Reggie died, I was just kind of like, oh no, Reggie, oh, he's dead. And I, just kind of accepted it. But then to have him survive, I was looking like, oh, he survived. And then Liz dying, I'm just kind of like, oh, they had an opportunity to kind of redeem her for me and maybe even go a little bit further. But now she's just dead. So what was the point?
And get like a little estrogen in this fucking,
sausage
adventure
fest,
of dudes. Yeah. But yeah, I have a few notes for. Oh, also, I do like the idea that 2 introduced the gold ball, because we anytime like new elements go, ooh, there's not a lot of new in 2, but the gold sphere is introduced in 2, and then there's, to me, more of a payoff with the gold sphere in 3. But yeah, speaking of Reggie, here's my note for 3. It just says Reggie, gross and awkward.
Yeah.
Watching him with I forgot her name. She had a fun name.
Rocky. Yeah.
Just I feel like there needs to be another guy in the room that needs to just pull Reggie aside, like, dude, can you just fucking cool it? It's a little cringy. She's not into it.
That said,
anytime you're with a girl, can you just not be like, hey, oh,
and that might,
I'm gonna try. Like, this is what I do. I try to get laid, and stupid woman doesn't want to fucking like.
That might be the saddest development of the franchise after the first movie, is the fact that it makes Reggie a pig and just kind of keeps him in his piggery.
Yeah,
for the most part.
And the question is, besides that, is that meant to be like endearing to like dudes and make them like chuckle? Like, I don't know. I just rolled my. I mean, it doesn't ruin the character, but it does make me, anytime he ends up with a girl, I'm like, oh fuck, here comes something, and then it happens on our eyes. And then we go back to like going after the tall man, or we go back to like him trying to protect Michael. Like, cool. And then we cut to like a scene where it's him and a girl in a hotel room. I'm like, oh fuck, here we go.
Or him and the one girl in that like group of goons. Like, the first thing is just like, okay, we're closing in on a rear end, and whatever. The first movie, I applaud for its randomness. It's like, what the fuckery? Like, how do you come up with this weird hodgepodge of and this weird group of people? The third movie, I also have that. It's just not as pleasant, but I just go like, yes. This is our third Phantasm movie, so like, there's a house with like a little Kevin McMaster, but like his booby traps are like fucking clowns, and like they'll kill you with his razor blade frisbee, and these like weird, like cartoonishly like Goomba criminal thugs, and she's got nunchucks, I guess, because like, the Three Ninjas and Ninja Turtles were big in the 90s, so like, like Karate Kid nostalgia. I don't know. There's so much in this movie that is random, that doesn't totally gel for me in the way that's random in the first movie and really works. Not talking shit, but like, you cooked it up, but like, I mostly just go, huh? Versus, yeah. All right.
Like, and the kids got all those dead bodies already buried. I understand we're living in this new world, and the tall man came and affected this town, but I don't if I saw this as a kid, I wonder if I'd relate to him more. But he's an interesting addition. I think his name was Tim.
Tim.
Yeah, he's an interesting addition. And I'm not hating on him, but I can't fully commit to liking this new trio that's on the road looking for Mike and the tall man. And the way that you just meet people and kind of go, oh, this is happening. We dealt with this. Oh, I'm on the road. You want to come on the road with me? Whoever took care of this, you should, all right, fuck it. We're all going to go. It seems to be the thing.
Okay. Now, that said, I think in a big way, I wrote the title down every time, like, like I'm going to start a new movie, a new slate of notes and everything. What I write next to the title is the year it got released. And I find that that's always helpful to me as a moviegoer to take into account what era was this movie released in? Because I feel like and even if I don't write it down, sometimes this movie is one of them. You can watch it and you can feel it. But I think I need that.
It's the early 90s.
Yeah. And I was just kind of like, okay, I have to say, I think I liked this movie better than you, or at least enjoyed it more than you did, because after the kind of, I guess I like it, I guess I don't. Oh, I guess I like it. Oh, I'm so bored. Oh, but I like that. Of the second movie, this movie, at least for me, just kind of took off and it remained consistent and it sailed for me. It was tonally dissonant from the first movie, no question.
Absolutely.
That said,
when you get to Tim's house, you are not in that first movie anymore.
Yes, exactly. That said, there are enough attempts they make with the things they bring forward, with what they offer, that I'm like, oh, so we're returning to this from the first movie, but in a completely different way. But I see what you're trying to do. I see what you're offering me. Because when I saw Tim, when it was revealed, because first we don't know he's a kid, I was like, oh, is he another, Jawa or something? Like, and then when he gets revealed and then he kills the only other woman in the movie at that point, who we just saw objectified by Reggie, and now she's dead. And I wasn't on her side or anything, but I'm like, there are two guys there. Why did it have to be her? Because I didn't know those guys were going to die yet. I thought, what if they kill the kid or whatever it is? When it gets revealed that he's a kid, and then he's this kind of like self-reliant and competent a fighter, I was like, oh, okay. One of the things that impressed me the most about the first movie was how resilient that little boy was. Not little, but that boy was. Before his voice changed and his pulse dropped, he was a man. And I feel like this is a very man of the house, Home Alone, 90s
but to like an
era.
nth degree.
Yeah.
Michael's resourceful. Like he takes, like a shotgun shell and tapes it to a thing. Whereas this is like an implausible level of booby trappery that, it's movie cleverness.
But what's plausible at this point? Like, again, if we're also playing with a dreamscape, what is plausible? So I like that he's a fighter and as competent as he is, also just because one of the male goons, I don't like him. I don't like him either time he's on screen. When he comes back as like the undead, or when he's there the first time, because he has a line when the kid like fights back and he's just like, boy's a little fighter. I like that. And I'm like, ew. All right, I'm calling child services. And the fact that the kid can hold his own against him. And then when he comes back later, he's got this weird pervy thing in the mausoleum while they're fighting the kid. And I'm just kind of like, kill him again, chop him to pieces. And I know this kid can, so go, kid. I was just like, okay, finally I get to, at least they've introduced someone who is an able fighter, who I'm not sitting there going like, God, I really wish, they could have had some foresight and make this person, again, competent. Same thing with Rocky, although that's a whole other story. We'll get to that in a second. But what else did I write? Oh, like Razor Frisbee, damn. And I was maybe because also I will take whatever I can to try and keep my head above water. I was like, back to the badassery of a boy. This kid wears badass with style, but what I love is that at some point they're hammering and he's got like it's not a sledgehammer, but it looks like maybe like a mallet. And he's putting some spikes in the ground. And I'm watching him hammer. He's not hammering. He's just tapping a
Fisher Price,
a mallet.
Hammer.
It's not moving. So I'm like, okay, your hammering gives you away. I know you're an actor and that you're shooting a movie, but I don't know. It didn't. His lack of technique at actual, just kind of not sedentary, but I guess pedestrian kind of survival skills. He's good when they stage it and they film it and they edit it this way and everything. So I'm just like, okay, but again,
you needed him to do the Keanu Reeves, like those 4 weeks of training, so that you believe him.
And then also we're back to him at a fireplace. We're back to like Reggie at a fireplace with a boy having a conversation, but there's a distance that I feel is respectful. And it really bothered me in the first movie the first time. It might not ever bother me again. But the first time I watched the movie, I was like, you don't have to hold him that long. You're fine. He's fine.
Eddie,
He's fine.
It's never occurred to me.
Well, good for you. There was one point I thought there was superior sound design, even though this isn't a remastered version of the movie. Even streaming it off Tubi, I have not surround sound, but I have like a sound bar and there's like a unit behind the couch. And at one point somebody whispered, it was Jody while they were on the road, and he whispered, Mike. And I heard it behind me and it fucking freaked me out because it was pretty late. And I was just like, I'm not comfortable. So, I mean, I would never call this movie scary, but at least there's like, I mean, again, there's things happening. Jody's back. Bill Thornbury, great.
Yeah.
Happy to see him. I thought it was funny when there's that sign that says "Welcome to the city of Holtzville population," and it had the number, but then somebody went in and spray painted a 0 over it. It felt very Nightmare on Elm Street 6, Freddy's Dead to me.
Yeah.
Which is kind of charming in and of itself. I don't really like that movie, but I was like, I can get on board. The map says we're fucked, I can.
Was it in the third one that they say that it was like a nuclear spill that happened to the town? Like, you don't want to go there. There was a nuclear spill.
I think so, yeah.
I do like that the tall man seems to be picking cities that have plausible reasons why they would then be empty. Like, I think that's very crafty of him in 2 and 3.
Yeah.
So it gives the old man Harbinger his moment, but it also gives the tall man, he's a crafty guy. I like him.
Also, okay, and I'm not done with the Tim thing. Like, I was totally living for this kid, actually. Like, the exchange that Reg said, little kids shouldn't play with guns. I ain't a kid no more, Reg. And I was like, yeah! Sorry if that's too loud. But then when Reg tries to leave him, I wrote, Reg is leaving Tim? And where the fuck did he get all that money? And then the second I see Tim stowing away in the back of the car, I'm just kind of like, yeah, kid. I was on board.
The second they even go there, I'm like, that kid's not staying.
Right.
He is jumping back in the fucking car. Yeah.
Yeah. After sucking that water from a hose. I don't understand. Also, the suck balls are now predominantly surveilling for some reason. It's the movie. And then I wrote,
this is the one that it has the eyeball in it, right?
Yeah.
And it doesn't attack. Well,
a few times.
Not only that, but this one, this is, I don't want to say the turning point, but this is where it really lays down some new things about, one, yes, the balls observe. They don't just go and kill. But 2, this movie opens, with not just Liz, dying and all that, but the tall man confronting them and letting them go.
Yeah.
And you go, well, that's different. And then that's when this movie lays out a very specific intention that the tall man has for Mike. Maybe we'll get to that later, but yeah. definitely some different directions that this goes in.
And even the lurkers that he's like burying, it's like it feels like a different kind of design, like a more zombified kind of appearance of these minions, I guess, of the tall man. I still don't know exactly. Do they figure in directly? I guess since they're fighting in the third act, they are.
I seem to see, so we've got the Jawas, we've got the Diggers, and then we've got what I just call zombies, you know, where it's just like, these three little criminals, they're zombies, and in the fourth movie there's like a zombie cop, like they're zombies.
Right. I did write, damn it, here we go. Here we finally get two potential female protagonists of color, and Tanisha takes a suck ball to the face. And Rocky, in her first scene, had to be saved by Tim. Even though I love Tim, I'm like, I just watched a little white boy save an adult black female. Okay.
I mean, not only this series, but also horror in general is, you know, hashtag horror so white. So just the fact that like there's even any color at all, hooray. And I mostly like Rocky.
I do too.
Quite a bit. In fact, my favorite thing about Rocky, this might be skipping ahead a bit, but my favorite thing about Rocky is at the end of this movie, she's like, okay, bye.
Yeah. Well, keep your balls in the air, Reg, whatever that
means. No, a lot of these, no one to get the fuck out. And after all that shit, like, I'm going to get the fuck out. No, I like her a lot because she's got a good head on her shoulders. I do find it interesting that when Reggie dreams of having sex with her, he dreams of his clothes being on. Dreams are weird, man. You can't always, but you know,
movies in the 90s, man.
Like, we're gonna see your nipples in the scene, but not yours. Like, okay, all right, whatever. But it's weird because like it almost sounds like I was talking shit, but like I just kind of wrote weird gang of heroes because it is just such a weird. It's not even like a motley crew. It's just such a strange gathering of heroes to have.
Unconventional for sure, but I don't know, that kind of made me all about it because like I said, I wasn't entirely on board with the part 2 Liz and Mike thing. I mean, it was fine. I didn't have a problem with it. I actually okay. Didn't have a problem with James LaGrosse's performance once I adjusted to the fact that like that's not that little boy. So I was like looking forward to seeing, okay, who is he going to be in the next movie? What's going to happen? And I saw another face. And it took me a while to recognize that it was a Michael, whatever his last name is.
Yeah. It's weird because I always knew that it was just James LaGrosse in 2. That I remember thinking like, I'm excited to have, for lack of a better word, I'm sorry, the real Michael back. However, it shouldn't be denied that James LaGrosse does good work in that first movie. He is an engaging, well-performing actor in that movie. But it's a different energy. And it, even though in theory, I'm always happy that he came back, particularly in this viewing, because I saw 3 my first time a while after seeing 2. So this contrast was I watched 2 and 3 back to back. And yet it just took some considerable getting used to. And it's not a bad performance, but it is just such a different vibe. But also for so much of what he's going through in 3, this isn't just like, oh, I'm playing the same character. And now here's me going to the grocery store. And here's me not experiencing much. Like, you're being prepped and groomed by the tall man, you know.
Right. I want to say,
accept a gold ball in your head.
Yeah. Okay.
And just the fact that in the beginning of the movie, he's letting you go because he wants you now for a reason instead of trying to kill you. That's almost even more scary. Like, what the fuck does this guy want with me?
Right. That said, because I didn't know it was him at first, I was just kind of like, who's this guy? And
really?
I don't think I recognized him until where was it? I wrote it down. Oh, it was quite into the movie. It was after Reggie's like unscrupulous perv coming
Oh,
on
wow.
to Rocky in his race car boxers. I got that far without realizing it was him. And then I literally wrote down the line, I am not loving this Mike. What happened? And then I recognized him. And A. Michael Baldwin is his name. And I just wrote, thus far, like this deep into the movie, A. Michael Baldwin's heart doesn't seem to be in this. Now, that said, as the movie progressed, and particularly as the franchise progressed, I realized I don't think that's fair to him. I don't think it's a bad performance either, in hindsight. But I think what I was watching initially was, or was looking for initially, was somebody who was going to kind of take the groundwork that James LaGrosse laid and pick it up and carry it over. And because I didn't know it was the original guy, I couldn't get excited about that and go just like, oh, well, okay, I'll just lock onto that. I'm just kind of like, who is this and why was he hired? Because he's much less, there was less, I guess, kineticism within his passivity. He seemed an incredibly kind of like just like locked down character who the deliveries felt flat, and I think I could, on a second viewing, attribute that to any number of things. But there was something about, for me, just as a viewer, not even with him being considered, it was just like, once I realized it was him, I was like, this is hard, because I love that kid in the first movie. I was really surprised how much I liked what James LaGrosse did in the second movie. I'm having the hardest time because everything else, not tonally, but just in terms of like enough components are connecting these movies. Like there's a mindfulness, there's an actual effort to try and connect them, as opposed to, well, let's just take this script and put Phantasm at the top of it and call it Phantasm. Like it's a Phantasm movie, I would argue. I can't finish the image in my head of the full narrative and go, I see where that boy grew up to be that 19-year-old man, young man, and then became this, however old young man years later. I mean, it's like 6 years had passed, but it didn't pass in the movie. So I'm like, I can't make sense of this. I
agree with you.
Get excited, and I can't.
It almost feels like there was like another movie. There was another movie or somewhere, like a story that I missed, where I didn't get to see that guy become this guy.
Yes, yeah, and I really,
and he's playing that guy, but like I don't have a way in there.
Like by the end of it, I was feeling for him. Like when that fucking gold suck ball and everything, I was like, no, not my Michael. And he was my Michael again, you know?
Yeah.
But it took a long time.
I actually started feeling it earlier. I felt it when like he and Reggie go back to, like, it's pretty much towards the beginning of the movie.
Yeah.
But, he and Reggie are like gonna like load up, and then the tall man shows up in this house, which I think even Reggie refers to as his house, and I'm like, Reggie got a new house? Okay, whatever.
Yeah.
But he shows up and it's all white, and he takes Michael, and I think Michael kind of like, he's facing forward, but he can kind of look to the side, and he's just like, what do you want with me? Or what are you gonna do to me? But just that fucking look on his face, it's one sentence, and I immediately was like, like I share your fear. I'm on your journey. Like I am with you now.
I love that Jodie's a new suckball though. Yeah, no, but I love that Jodie's a new suckball too.
In my community of very few, Phantasm people that I know, we generally refer to them as spheres. So it's very weird to hear you call them suckballs.
I can't drop it now. That's what they are. Maybe
you usually can't, Eddie, when it comes to suckballs.
I usually can't. It's true. Sorry, folks. I'm insatiable. But I also totally technically, I really appreciated all the different arrangements that they put the theme to in this one, because there was like one initially that had like, it was still kind of the synth thing, but they had like some more traditional orchestration, like with actual instruments underneath it. And then a little bit later, they were, I don't remember exactly when, but there was like almost a sad harmonica version of it. And that might have happened another couple times in the movie. And every time it got reintroduced, because now I'm familiar with the rhythm and I know what notes to look for. My ear, just kind of picks it up.
Mhm.
Every time it got reintroduced in the third movie, I really appreciated that. It was another thing that just kind of brought me back. Anytime something wasn't
Oh
connecting
yeah,
for me,
that melody will
it
do
would
it.
connect me back. Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Totally. And of
Uh,
course, the cast, like the other cast members who
mhm.
have been there the whole time. I'm just kind of like, I love my tall man. I don't love Reggie, but I will watch Reggie. I mean, and I do love him. I do love him,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
but he's got problems.
Yeah, he is
Clearly.
beloved by the horror fans and the horror community, and a lot of it has to do with
Yes.
a lot of it doesn't have to do with his scenes in
Yes.
hotels with girls.
Yeah.
And I met him at a convention once, and you know what? Really fucking chill, nice dude. Like really
Oh,
nice dude.
awesome.
Yeah, he was
Yes.
great.
That's what I
Super
want to
great.
hear.
Yeah,
Okay.
great
Also,
energy to him. Very yeah. Like
one last thing
honestly,
about
when I see him in the first movie, grabbing his guitar and just jam, like I see him in person, like it feels like the same guy. Even
Yes, yes. And in relation to him, there is one moment that should have happened for me in the finale, but didn't. Rocky, when she's gonna fight the goon girl who comes back, she's just like, "Yo, bitch, hands off my boy," and I'm like, okay, I don't know what the writers meant by writing that. And I don't feel like Rocky, the actress, is giving it like a kind of like we're gonna end up together vibe, thank God. But I still want to ask, really? Like, that's the line we're going with? Like, can't she just be a badass and not get all territorial? Hey, girl, like, hands off my man, because it's like he's
my
not
Reggie the ice
okay.
cream man. Yeah,
It bothered me. Yeah, she could have just been like, hands off my ice cream. I don't know. I don't know what she could have said anything else, and I might have been okay. But there was that, and then the last thing I wrote is just Jody when he's confronting no, when Mike is confronting Jody at the very end. Yes, and Jody, and I think it's Mike. He's like, Jody, what the hell's happening here? And that's when he tells him, like, are they on the beach or something? And he says, like, I don't even remember the exact line, but it's something like you don't, seeing something is different than understanding it, and understanding it comes with time and all that kind of stuff. And it's just kind of like, I'm enjoying myself enough to carry that into the next movie with me. But something better get explained, because if I get into the fourth movie and this movie and that line from this movie feels kind of like we don't know what it means, so
see, and
wait, be patient.
And I thought of it almost more of a reflective line about like, this is how viewing the movies is. So
yeah. It was but I enjoyed myself on the whole. I was like, I didn't feel 50-50 about this. The lows might have been even lower because they were low, but there were more highs for me. So
yeah, there's a considerable amount of value in 3. And then having seen 4 and 5, I also like 3 because it was the last time it all still felt at the sort of like what a Phantasm movie is, where we get to end in a mausoleum. We visit mausoleums and go to barren towns and see the graves being dug up. And 2 and 3 also, they hit the road, but they still also manage to go to places that have mausoleums. And 4 and 5 take place considerably in the desert. So like the formula gets altered. So like, I don't know, 3 was like my last time of like, oh, I get to see a ball fly down a mausoleum hallway. I get more interiors and less desert scenes. Although then it becomes like it's the other thing. Like, well, now Phantasm 4 and 5, like we are deserty, and we already were on the road in his other movies. So there's a sort of slow like torch passing of what a Phantasm movie gets to be.
Mm.
Um, things I found. I just have really minimal notes, but like I love the ever evolving kind of when we reveal little things. This is one of the few franchises where they keep adding on new things or revealing new things,
Mm-hmm.
and they don't feel like tacky add-ons. They legitimately feel cool or engaging or make me want to know more. For example, like in the first movie, we know the tall man's from like another, they think they say planet, but we don't even know planet for sure. Other world. We learn that it
Dimension.
is
Yeah.
another dimension / world.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, his fingers, and then they take the finger and they take it home, and just like in a
Yeah.
dream, a thing becomes another thing, but it
Yeah.
becomes like this little bug.
Yeah.
I mean, he revisits brilliantly in Bubba Hotep with the fighting of the scarab with the bedpan.
Yeah.
So yeah, I enjoy that, but also when you get to the second one, and then he has like the tall man now has like a tentacle going out of his head. I'm like, oh, so there's
Yeah.
a bug thing going on with this guy, and it's not just
Mm-hmm.
my finger, but now it's a thing coming out. And now in the third one, we have like his hands become like sentient bug hands.
Mm.
I just the more little tricks, the more little things you add to him, the more I just go, what the fuck is he? Like, what the fuck world is he from? What the fuck is this? And then it turns out that there's a gold ball in his head.
Yes.
I'm just you keep adding to the lore, and with 3, I'm like, I'm still here for it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, uh, this there's a version of this that could have gone horribly awry, but I really do like the idea of Jody being a ball now.
Okay. Um,
And I think, yeah, it's the third one that introduces, yeah, it's the third one. It's like, well, no, we take the brains, put them in a ball.
right,
The
right, right.
bodies,
Yeah.
we dwarf them. But
Right.
yeah, no, I could see how that could lose me, but thank God in this one it doesn't, and I'm quite okay with how do we keep Jody in this franchise as an actor? And like, well, here's how.
Mm.
But also his appearance and his transformation like affect with an A the characters, like,
Mm-hmm.
so I'm all for it. And I'm also as far as storytelling and taking a thing and going this way with it, I like where they go with Jody and 4. So yay.
Okay.
One little nitpick I had.
Yes,
I
yes, yes,
forget
yes,
where.
yes.
I just wrote down that it happened, but I don't remember the action. But there's a climax in the third movie's fight where something happens where I remember the tall man, like they've got the advantage on him or something.
Yeah.
I remember like in the second one, he could telekinetically lift someone by her necklace. You know,
Yeah, the rosary.
you
The
know?
rosary, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm watching this going like, bro, you're telekinetic.
Yeah.
How are you? You could
Yeah.
be winning this fight right now. And I just remember being a little frustrated at that. It's a nitpick. But like, I'm like, this conflict doesn't even be happening. Like, you've got it on these people. And I don't remember exactly what happened, but yeah.
In my research, I saw on, I believe, the Wikipedia page, I found this one. This was based off of, I guess, a book. I don't know if it was published, but a story that Roger Avery wrote. It was his dream sequel to the third Phantasm. And it was supposed to, when it was being produced and in talks and everything, Bruce Campbell was supposed to be playing the co-star, whoever that might be. I don't know if that role just got, plucked out. But I was like, oh, was it supposed to be Ash? Or an Ash-like character? That would have been nice. So that's why I thought when you were mentioning, Ash relations and everything, I was like, it's going to come back to that in a way. It doesn't complete it, not to completion, but it starts to branch out in that direction. So Roger Avery saw something in that.
I read about Roger Avery writing his sequel to 4 and Don Coscarelli liking it. No, I'm sorry. A sequel, like he wrote a 4, sequel to 3.
Yes.
He wrote a 4 that ultimately never happened.
Yeah.
I never heard anything about Bruce Campbell for that one. I heard about Bruce Campbell being in 5.
Oh, really?
which to me makes sense because they'd already at that point had filmed Bubba Hotep,
Uh-huh.
so it would make a lot of sense. But yeah, I heard that
Well, apparently
an
they had their
earlier
sights on him early.
an earlier version of 5 leaned a little more into the apocalyptic world, and Bruce
Mm.
Campbell being one of these like hero freedom fighters that
Okay.
ultimately changed and adapted as time went on.
Okay.
Let's get into 4.
Right.
Because 4 also, just like 3, opens with a tall man letting Reggie go. It's an interesting thing to have this guy be such a scary, imposing figure, and now I don't want to say they softened the character. And again, I don't want to just make a dig because I'm not necessarily upset with this, but the tall man doesn't scare me in 4 at this point. He's not scary anymore.
Mm.
He has a lot of dialogue about things he wants to do, and he's trying to get you to do this and seduce you. He's going to let Reggie go, but also, not only am I okay with that because of where the story goes, I'm just simply observing that presence, that fucking dream where you're in a bed and he's going, boy, and his fucking arms come and grab you. Like that tall man, that's not this anymore, but that's fine. Because I don't need the same thing over and over and over again. You're evolving the story, you're also evolving this character. But in 3, the beginning of 3, they show that the acid embalmed 2 gets like taken away, and like a new guy comes out of the portal, and you're like, ah. So the fact that like at the end of 3, I think it's 3, because it gets so confusing because every movie features like a car blowing up and someone coming out of a portal.
Yeah, right.
But, no, in the 3 that the ball comes out of his head, but then he's just back.
Yeah.
So it begs the question: are these all like copies of the exact same guy coming from different dimensions, or is there something a little bit different about each one? Because he seems like a little bit of a different character. There's I don't want to say softened, but like his intentions. He is less threatening. He is more, I don't want to say like intriguing, but if you're planting that idea, I like the idea that, well, this one's a little different compared to the other guy from that first movie. Also, if we're going to start with 4, again, you end the movie with Tim getting pulled through the glass. And then not only is it that we don't find out what happened to him, because I don't need necessarily to find out what happened to him. What I do need is somebody to say his fucking name and be like, hey, what happened to Tim? Is Tim okay? Like, just fuck him. Like, fuck Liz. Fuck Tim. Again, if you join our motley crew, unless you're fucking Rocky and you hit the road, if you're not named Mike or Reggie, like, you're fucked in these movies if you join them. Don't join them.
Oddly enough,
because you will get killed, and they will also not give a fuck about you once you get killed.
As much as I loved Tim, it did not bother me that he wasn't mentioned. I almost felt like he didn't have a place in this particular chapter because there were other things on their side. Also, okay, this is the thing. I'm just gonna go down. He had
a nice scene at the fireplace. You liked Tim.
I did, and that was in that last movie.
So, and you're down with like the Resident Evil wiping the slate clean. Like, well, that was the last movie. Now we're on
I was with Resident Evil, so no. And also, this is the thing. Like, I walked into this one, and I think like right off the bat, I got a different vibe from it. I remember it didn't feel. Yeah. I think one of the first things I wrote was this. Was this a feature film? Because it feels like a TV movie. And I looked it up, and it looks like it made it to festivals. It played at festivals, but it went straight to DVD.
I could have sworn it also, maybe I'm not remembering, I could have sworn like it like came to Showtime first. But it definitely was a straight to DVD.
Yeah.
I know that.
So, and I felt that almost immediately. That said, I think it's fun to talk about these because the experience of sitting through 4 the first time was a bit of a slog for me. I'll go into why later, but now, in terms of like, now that I know, have seen the entire franchise through, this one for me has the opportunity to be the kind of movie that I really, really enjoy being patient for. I wonder if seeing it on the heels of 3, which was so accelerated and felt so kind of like emblematic of where I think 90s studio films were going, 4 felt, I wouldn't say more indie, but it certainly took its time like an indie movie would. It took it, I mean, it really took its time.
And I can't help, once again, I can't help but wonder if that was the intention, or if it's also a byproduct of our shooting schedule and me filling pages and how much we have in the desert, how many days we have to shoot, and it's sort of like a happy accident.
All of that said, this movie for me, I had multiple pages for all the other movies. This is the only one I only have like 1 page. So I'm just going to go down. Kind of don't let this. This is, don't read too much into this, but I was in a similar circumstance with Texas Chainsaw: The Beginning when we did our breakdown of that. So I'm just going to say, I wrote down, I'm just going to comment if I feel, first thing I wrote was, Mike is sly. No, because I don't want to lose my mic. I just got him back. I wrote, why does Tall Man want to transform Mike? Not like exasperatedly, but I'm just like, is this movie going to answer the question for me? And honestly, I don't know. I wrote, I guess those suckballs just pinned Reggie. Because I thought before we lost little Tim and we saw Reg up against the wall with all those suckballs, I thought he got impaled by all of them.
Oh, no, he's just being held up.
In the end of 3, I thought he got impaled by all of them. That's what I perceived. So obviously in the 4th one, but no, I didn't. No,
I felt that in 3. I
totally
did.
I totally did not. Why?
I did.
Why would they only pin him? So I was upset because I'm like, I don't want him to die. But then I see it in 4, and I'm like, oh, that's just silly. So then I wrote, okay.
Because Eddie, but he's reacting as if he's like still like lucid and can't move, versus going ow, ow, fucking ow, with blood coming out of him. Like they've pinned him. Like, oh.
But I've seen censorship in this franchise before, so how do I know?
But watch Reggie in that scene. He's acting like
I will again. I will definitely revisit every one of these movies. So there's that. Okay. Can't say the same about Texas Chainsaw Massacre: The Beginning. I wrote deleted scene in the ice cream truck because it was such a blip in the first movie. I didn't remember it from the first viewing. Second viewing, I'm just like, there it is. But there was actual like dialogue and an actual kind of like impetus behind like, like what that scene was supposed to be, as opposed to just kind of like a transitional point in the first movie to show, okay, Reggie said he's going to take care of Mike, gets him in the ice cream truck, gets him from A to B. Next scene. In this version, it's expanded and there's an actual conversation, and I'm like, okay, do you know what I'm talking about?
Are you talking about the footage from the first movie that they inserted into this as like a flashback? But
this was expanded. This scene.
It's a deleted scene.
I know,
but it's wholly deleted. Like what? It's not an expand.
No. There is one like collection of seconds just establishing them in the truck. Reggie is driving. Mike is sitting there. That's what I mean.
Oh yeah,
but I even forgot that happened. So I was like, but I mean, that's obviously these are obviously the actors when they were younger. But were these just deleted scenes, or like? Because at this point, I have nothing but questions. I was wondering, like, or does like Don Coscarelli have this much foresight that he knew, kind of like in a Richard Linklater way, like I'm gonna want to make, a sequel, so I'm gonna like just enrich these bonds between these characters. I'm going to have this hanging scene and everything like that. So I was just, I didn't know. I didn't have any answers. I know now.
Yes.
But at the time, just experiencing the movie, I was like, okay, so is this all going to add up to something also was another question I had.
You might have done more research than me, but I think I remember reading that like, because, they cut a bunch of footage from the movie and then like got kind of lost, but like they recovered a bunch of footage. Apparently not all of it, but they recovered a bunch. And then, can I interrupt your notes since we're on this subject? It never felt, and I don't mean to talk shit, but it doesn't really feel organic. It felt like, if you're telling the scene, if you're telling a scene, you go, oh man, it reminds me of that last perfect day. And then you would write a scene that feels like your last perfect day, and what you wouldn't write is just like he jumps on the back of that truck and takes an ice cream and then like jumps off and eats it, and then you cut back.
Right.
No. What you did was you had a scene that you found and you shoehorned it into the movie, and you didn't give it a good segue because that last perfect day before the tall man showed up, and I'm like, what's this gonna be? And then it's just some random cutscene that doesn't fit. And you know what it made me think of? It made me think of in Ed Wood when he's visiting the guy, that old man, and he goes, "Oh, what are you gonna do with all this footage? Oh, we're just gonna get rid of it. Oh, what a waste! We open on this thing, and we don't know what the explosions are, but it's upsetting all the buffalo. Like he's concocting something to make the stock footage work, and it felt like there were times where it was, what can we concoct to jam in this scene of him eating ice cream out of the back of the truck?" The good version of that, though, is this, because I know that they filmed like different endings to Phantasm. They didn't like know what the ending was going to be, and it feel like that hanging scene that feels like an ending to Phantasm. And
it's definitely like a climactic component. Like it definitely feels like that. Yeah.
But using it in this context, like repurpose, that's a good repurposing where it feels like an alternate dream history. Like what the fuck, like that's not a flashback. This is interesting, and that scene was never intended to be this interesting. And to have Mike trying to hang himself, but then having, I don't know, especially once you get into 5 with the idea of multiple dimensions and multiple consciousnesses. That there's 5 does a good job of kind of like not retconning, but like kind of retroactively connecting or explaining little puzzles that we drop in 4, and that's one of them. So I don't like that big ice cream scene, but I do quite like the hanging scene.
The hanging scene, I'll jump ahead to that, or actually, you know what? I'm not. Let me get through this, and then I'll get to that, because I feel like you'll get a better idea of like what I was experiencing. I enjoyed Mike's fortune teller in the passenger seat when he's driving the car, and he's just kind of like seeing visions. I was like, oh, that's nice. I mean, again, sometimes it's just like, oh, look, the thing I know, but also, I don't know at this point, like exactly what's happening to him. And I'm very worried about him because he's got this orb in his head, and it's a suck ball. That's not good. So there's that. But I did write like flashback ? To something that never happened. I think that was the ice cream truck. Big ass explosions are back with that whole cop sequence with Reggie when he gets pulled over. I didn't really enjoy that sequence though. It felt like it was just kind of, again, let's make a movie. Well, and I know this had a lower budget than I think probably anything else. Oh, actually, no, that's not true. The first one had a lower budget, but this one, it felt like a low budget and maybe a lack of enough ideas to build a cohesive, solid experience overall. I think there were interesting things about the movie, but I think like that scene, I didn't care. I was so checked out, and I care about Reggie, and I didn't care. Yeah.
I to me, there are some highs in this movie, for sure. But within the highs and lows, that scene, I remember just going like, can you still hear me? One of my earbuds.
Totally.
This one died.
Oh shit.
I remember at some point I actually checked my watch to be like, how long is this? It's a 5-minute scene.
Yeah.
And all it felt like to me was like, we have like an 85-page script, and like, can we bump this movie up to 90 minutes? Here, we'll do a fucking this, like it doesn't serve any purpose. It doesn't.
Yeah.
And then also I feel bad when Reggie blows up the car. I'm like, what about the guy in the trunk? Fuck, all right.
This was the first one where I repeatedly kept checking the time signature just to see like how much more do I have to sit through. I kept doing it. So yeah. Then I wrote Then I wrote, it took us 27 minutes to get to the point where I think we should have started. And that's where Mike reveals he's writing, he's either reading or writing, I can't remember, his will.
He's writing. Yeah.
Okay. And that's when he, in the voiceover, starts revealing his plan. He's going to seek out the tall man. Big surprise. But there was something about the language he used. I didn't write it down. But like there was a newfound, like he wanted to find out the origin of like all of this. Like he had questions he wanted answered. He was going to confront it head on.
The only way to defeat him was to hopefully try to understand.
Right.
Yeah.
And I was
like, he could learn something from that.
And I fucking loved that. But then 20 minutes, yeah.
Anytime we're in the desert with Michael,
yeah,
I'm on board. Now that he's got the fucking ball in his head and he can manifest fucking forks and he's jumping through shit, I'm on board.
Right.
Anytime we cut back to Reggie, that's not a dig against Reggie. What they wrote for him is filler material. It's him on the road, and then he meets a girl, and then she has fucking boob things, and like nothing. every time we cut back, I watch the scene, and I'm like, this isn't servicing anything. It's just giving Reggie something to do.
Yeah.
But every time we cut back to Michael, I was like, oh.
I can't even say every time because it took 20 minutes later for us to get to him finally using his powers after those initial 27 minutes.
There's a little bit of wandering in the beginning.
A lot of wandering. And I'm usually on board for like, psychological journey manifested as, landscape. I love that. But there was something about it
that's when he's like dropping rocks on the fucking Jawas though, right?
That was pretty cool. But see, this is the problem. Like I was back to kind of like a Richter scale of like, oh, I like that. But then he continues to proceed and there's more things like kind of hovering places and he's always looking in the wrong place. And I'm like, what is the use of having powers if you can't see what I see? If you can't sense there's something. So it was very confusing and very kind of frustrating for me.
Back to your
notes.
Then
I wrote, and I did write overall like in agreement with you. So Reggie is still a pig, and now Mike is attempting suicide. I'm so glad they made this movie. The hanging thing. Because then we get to that. While I was watching it, I got what they were doing, and yet there was something in me that wanted more, and that felt like there is more to mine here. I was like, there's something about this footage that I feel could have been put to even better use. I think this footage could have even opened this movie.
Absolutely.
If we want to plant the seed that like, how do we connect this with like the story we're about to tell? Well, okay, alternate dimensions and like, why do I have this memory, but I also have this memory kind of thing, opening that door, that's great. But what if there's some kind of emotional core? What if because in that sequence, he lets the tall man go. He cuts him down. So he is ultimately the reason that all of this has happened, maybe just in his own mind, because yes, every other time they've tried to kill the tall man, he has come back. So that could have easily happened. But who knows? Because the tall man was not breaking free from that particular predicament. He was stuck there. So unless somebody else wanders into this dream landscape or dimension or whatever you want to call it and helps him down, he's basically he's not destroyed, but he's at least incapacitated. And then what if we did something else? But he let him down. What I would have loved to have seen with this movie, and again, the barren wasteland of the desert and everything, it's so easy to plug into this, is if we planted some kind of guilt in his head, in like alongside like this other thing that's been transplanted with the suckball. And if there could have been some kind of climax, I would have been totally on board for this. I had enough time to think about it during the movie. If there could have been some kind of, I almost started to move myself because I was like, what if there were like a climax where he feels guilty about it and he's carrying that, but he's also carrying this suckball, and then Reggie comes across him and we find that the turmoil that he's in is he's feeling this guilt, and if he embraces the suckball and he gets these powers, then maybe he has a chance to fight the tall man. But in doing that, he's really kind of submitting to him, but he can't see that. And it's to escape the guilt that he set him free that one time, that earlier time. And Reggie has to be the one to tell him that guilt you want to escape is the only thing anchoring you to your human self right now, or at least the most poignant thing. And what if, as Reggie, I can offer you more things? Like, I don't want guilt to be a virtue, but what if it's something conscious? What if it's what?
That's so good. Because not just for Michael's story, but because it gives Reggie really something to do in this movie.
Yes!
All of Reggie's scenes, you know what they do? They lead up to him giving Michael a tuning fork.
I know!
And we're thinking, is that all he does in this fucking movie? I watched all that to get to hand him a tuning fork?
Right.
Fuck.
And there's not even really
gives
like
Reggie a purpose and a role in the story and an emotional anchor, the way he was an emotional anchor at the end of the first movie. And
I was just like, I wish they would have let me write this. But whatever.
It's fucked up, because when I was watching 4 and 5, I remember thinking, I'm kind of with you in that, like, you were kind of having your issues with this movie. I kind of was too. And I remember watching 5 thinking, I wonder if Eddie and I could cook up a fun way to do this.
I thought about you, because we've done it before with other movies, even not even like coming up with plots, but like I remembered our paranormal breakdown where we were just kind of like, if we were to pick up the slack for, or not, I mean, that sounds like a chore. If we were to pick up where like the marked ones left off, we would have done so with some care, and some, you know, we mentioned that, and I'm like,
the ghost dimension is not the logical next step.
Exactly. And if there's, and this is the thing, if there's a franchise that has enough to it, I mean, I don't have to love every single chapter like it's the best movie ever, but if there's enough to it and I can ask myself through my fandom, what do I want to see next? And the problem was, I think, with Oblivion, as it's 4 is subtitled, I do appreciate the IV being the 4 in Oblivion.
I love the IV of Oblivion, but I do wonder, why is it called Oblivion?
Exactly. And again, if it's an emotional story about like putting your guilt, like what you obliviate is your guilt. And therefore, but at the same time, if what's motivating you to obliviate your guilt is so you can destroy Tall Man, but the guilt is the one thing that's keeping you human, then are you really obliviating yourself? And Reggie has to be the one to teach him to obliviate his desire to be like this higher being. And that's something I would have really gotten into. One thing I do appreciate, though, that got introduced, because you mentioned Tall Man not being scary in this one. I was fine with that because I was waiting for the origin story, and I loved the idea of kind of figuring out where he came from. I don't always like that. No, but then once I saw Jebediah Morningside,
I don't consider Jebediah Morningstar
Morningside.
He's not scary. I'm saying the Tall Man isn't scary.
No, I agree. But
I love Jebediah Morningside.
So do I, but I'm sad for him. He's tragic.
But I love getting to see Angus Scrimm after 3 movies getting to stretch those muscles.
Yes. And get to be sweet. I mean, all that wonderful sweetness that you were talking about, I'm just like, I know it's in him because it was effortless. It coursed through him in that, on that porch with that fortune teller lady who still was sitting there rocking knowingly. So I guess she's psychic in every dimension. But I mean, even just like the line, I thought like, okay, they're planting a seed. I hope when Tall Man says in the desert, careful what you look for, you just might find it. And I'm like, what? And I still feel like I haven't got an answer. Doesn't mean I won't. I might eventually, but I didn't with this viewing.
And something I didn't see coming was when if you were going to tell me we're going to find out something about the origins in 4, I have always presumed that the Tall Man himself is alien in nature and in origin. And the fact that this all comes from a fucking human from Earth, and this fucking guy invents the tuning poles. and opens up to, and
Yeah.
then also by crossing over to a dimension, when the tall man steps out, I immediately, I still have so many questions. Like,
Yeah.
is that Jebediah but changed? Is that a
Yeah.
copy of Jebediah but evil? Is it an evil entity that's just assumed the form of him? And Jebediah, is he dead, or is he back there somewhere? Like, again, you gave me an answer, but now I just have 5 more questions.
Yeah, and there were things
Also-
that. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Also, when Mike first arrives there, and again, my first impression was that this is an other world. It's an alternate, complete reality.
Yeah.
And that Jebediah was like trapped there, and then I was like, oh, no, this is just him traveling back in time. Got it. Like, and oh, you're the first future man to come through my fucking portal that I made.
Yeah.
So the idea, so again, once again, now we're introducing the idea of time travel, and even Tall Man in the 5th one's like, not where, but when, and we don't really know it yet at the time, but when he is on the barren streets of L.A.,
on Wilshire Boulevard.
I know.
I was like, "There's the El Rey."
The El Rey. I know. And that like abandoned laundry facility that's next to it was probably an operating laundry facility back then.
Right.
No, but that again, 5 does a good job of explaining, or going back to 4. If we're dealing with time travel, now that we know that essentially, like in the future, that there is also a virus that like wipes out people, makes their heads explode. Like now it's not just some weird dreamlike thing. Now there's a reason why Wilshire is empty, and he even says like, Jody, it's such a throwaway line. Jody's like, we got to get out of here before we get infected or something. I'm like,
right.
What are we talking about? So yeah, so if 4th film in the series starts to throw time travel at you, sometimes I go, fuck you, but this time I did not go, fuck you. I had a really, it just made me like Jebediah more. It made me also, again, now I have questions about like, wait, that's your wife? So your wife's the fortune teller in 1, and does that mean that little
right, exactly.
granddaughter? And oh, I've gone cross-eyed, like,
yeah, right. Or even just like when the dimensional forks, like multiple ones, just kind of like show up in the desert.
Oh yeah.
And it happens twice where he looks out and there's just a sea of them, and I'm like, all right, well, I know there were multiple tall men, obviously, so now there are multiple. I mean, we knew there were multiple dimensional forks, but when they're all in such a close proximity, what does that mean?
And that's the thing, different dimensions is my impression.
Yeah, but why are they so close together? Like, is it a hotspot?
I don't know. Ask fucking
is it a hellmouth?
Michael. He's the impression, he's got the ball in his head, so he's the one summoning them in the desert.
I guess.
Why are they all close together? There's a lot of questions.
I just wrote this movie is emblematic of how the effort put forth predominates it, even if everyone shows up. Like I needed a little bit more. I could kind of appreciate Tall Man's origin story and whatnot, but what the fuck? And the last thing I wrote was just I have more questions, but not the way I did after the first movie. After the first movie, I had nothing but questions. But in that great way, with this movie, I had nothing but questions, and I was a little annoyed. So I won't go into 5 if you're not ready to close the book yet, but I just will say the first note I wrote at the top of 5 before anything started was, I don't know.
I only have a few more thoughts on 4.
Okay, go for it.
It's a movie that I actually didn't have the greatest time watching while I was watching it.
Yeah.
But like when I look back on it and think about it, I actually get more out of it now. It's weird.
Yeah.
Because at the time, first, let me say this. One of the things I like about it is, in a weird way, 4 and 5 are kind of like it's somewhat of a return to form to 1. In that, just in this aspect, but the idea that 1 costs $300,000. 2 was a studio movie. I think it was like $3 million. The second one was like privately funded, but I think it was like $2 million. 4 and 5 cost like $5.
They had a budget for 4, but it wasn't I don't know where it went. I don't know where it went. Yeah.
So in that sense, not only budgetary, because that's a petty comparison, but also like 2 and 3 are fairly straightforward. Three introduces the idea of, like he's dreaming that he's having sex with clothes on, and then Jody shows up and takes him to rescue Mike, and then when he wakes up, they've rescued Mike. So it gets a little weird, but it's just a little bit. And even then, that introduced the idea of 5 really goes into planes of existence, mentally, introduced in 3. But 4 and 5 go back to like, what the fuck? That now 1, 4, and 5 are playing mentally, narratively in the same. So it's a nice return for 4. But yeah, there are times in 4 I was like, I guess, all right. I did that a few times. I'm just like, this is okay, sure. And I would sometimes wonder with 4 and 5, and I'm going to sound almost like a little bit of an asshole here, but hopefully not, because I'm not declaring this. It is a question, not a statement.
Okay.
I can't tell sometimes in 4 and 5 if this is just something that Don Coscarelli hasn't totally plotted, and she goes, well, what if this happened? Then when we did this, well, fuck, and then this happens, and then it's just a kind of slapdash of ideas, or if it is all meticulously crafted and plotted out, and he has all these things for it, and there's all this shit going on that I don't totally understand.
Sure.
The way that like fucking Richard Kelly, when he made Donnie Darko, was like,
yeah,
well, all this is happening. Of course, I'm not communicating it in the fucking movie, but all this is happening. You're like, fuck you.
And at the end of the day, whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever you
didn't
think.
you know? Like when Drew Barrymore said that, it really meant that, and you're like, no, because that's not communicated. I can't. It's not to that degree with this, but I can't tell if he's got all these things going on, but he's not communicating them properly. It's just not being told the right way, or if it's just like, and then there's a ball and there's some tuning forks out in the desert, and yeah, now he wants him to be the tall man, and yeah, Jebediah, and there's some tuning, and you, I watching 4 and 5, I can't definitively say that like both hands are on the wheel and I am taking you to this path. And the path is clear. It seems a little foggy, and I can't tell if you know the way or if you're bullshitting me that you know the way.
Okay.
But at least I can say definitively that I don't think he's full of shit. You know what I mean?
I don't either. I don't
know.
either. Yeah.
I don't know. But I'll tell you, man, the highs of 4 is again afterwards. I really kind of lean back and just everything with like, once you get the momentum of Jody in the desert with the ball and the going to meet fucking Jebediah and coming back, and I do think it was a bit of a rug pull. I thought there was going to be more to the ball that he was making, the sphere, and then it just tall man. And I really thought it was a nice way to end the movie, though. I love the idea that it didn't end with someone being pulled through a glass window. Even if the scene didn't really work for me, because I'll be honest, it didn't. It was just neat to have every movie ends with tall man says something, glass.
Yeah.
So and it was so mellow of an ending. And you look like you have something to say.
I'll just read you the next note I wrote for part 5.
Okay.
I literally just watched the 4th movie, and I don't remember what happened to lead us here.
And you just watched it. Yeah, no.
I had just watched it, and I was so checked out. I was like, I don't even remember how we got here, but good.
Can I tell you, I watched 4 and 5, and the next day I was like, what the fuck happened in 4 and 5? So I went and I watched like this 5-minute recap on 5.
Oh, okay.
And I remember at the very beginning of the recap, I was like, wait, but just like you, I'm like, how the fuck did we get here? Reggie's coming from where now? Oh, yeah. That's right. Okay, so yeah, they blow up the car. But yeah, no, having gone back, because I remember how I felt in that moment where it's assumed that Mike is dead on the ground. I love the idea that Reggie's like, I'm jumping through that fucking portal then. and I couldn't wait to see what he was going to do next. And the fact that we went into like this dreamlike flashback moment, it felt ethereal, and the fact that and it's not a total bummer, but I was really looking forward to seeing what Reggie did next. The problem is the next sequel didn't happen for a fucking long time.
Yeah.
So it's not like you can just jump right in, and instead we open with like Reggie coming out from that. I was like, oh, bummer.
In
So
his
I
little
really would like to have seen,
ice cream man suit, yeah.
yeah, it was. I mean, and first of all, the ice cream man suit, that's for the fans, you know. Like I don't
totally.
I don't see. Yeah, it's
No, it's okay.
Yeah.
There he is.
So little nitpicks for 4, and then I'm out. This one for some reason it fucking irked me, Eddie. And this is petty. Ready? It is established in 1 that Mike and Jody's parents died first. Then a year later, Jody died. And in 4, they mention Jody dying and then like the parents being upset about it. And I'm like, whoa. What? Huh? And if we're going off of, but this doesn't feel like it, you could hand wave and go, well, in 5, we established that there's alternate realities. I'm like, yeah, but we're not doing that yet. Did they fuck up their own continuity? What the fuck? Or is this supposed to be one of those things that 5 kind of fixes? Because I don't feel like we're in a different reality. We're in the same reality after the first 10 minutes of 2, 3, 4. That's a reality. 5 really starts to fuck with reality, but 2, 3, 4 is all one kind of continuity. So anyway, I just didn't like that they mentioned the parents being upset that Jody died.
All right.
It's a little, especially when like this series has been really good about its continuity. This doesn't feel like some asshole writer showed up and made up his own thing. This is all one team, one dream, man, you know?
Sure, yeah.
Quite literally one dream. And then, I just got really irritated at Reggie, just because, no, because Jody told him in 3, don't trust what you see. Not only that, but just based on your experiences in 2 and 3, you should learn to not trust women that you pick up on the road. Not to mention what fucking Jody told you in the last movie, but not trusting what you see. Don't share a room with this woman. First of all, I just thought it was funny that they're on this open road, but and she gets so like caught up in the moment that her fucking car. Whatever. No, so I just got really upset about that. Besides, like and that, so that he's doing his thing. She rejects him. I love that he rolls over like, oh, I'm not gonna get laid again. I think he's having a dream and he wakes up, and like she's not under the covers. She's in her fucking underwear and her shirt, and I'm just like, dude, don't. You're being weird. Don't be weird. Be the gentleman.
No, Reggie.
She's never said yes. She's never consented.
Yeah, she's
Please
asleep,
don't.
dude.
And then the fact that like her boobs are actually making like, I'm like,
far out.
Have you not seen the Phantasm movies? That's not good. Far out. No one is. Well, actually, that's not true. But I was going to say no one's that horny, but maybe someone is. But like, even then, even if there isn't anything far out, get your hands off her fucking shirt, motherfucker. Like, I don't know. Sorry.
I know. And I was
don't
right there.
I don't want to have these feelings about Reggie, because when he's not in a room in a bed with a girl, he's generally a pretty fun guy.
Yeah, I almost kind of want to do that compartmentalizing thing, because it's a fictitious person. It's not an actual man, where I'm just kind of like, but that's not really him. That's just the movie. That's just that's just the movie making him do that. Like, and I arrived that later.
On the one hand, I have to wonder about Don Coscarelli and like wanting to keep bringing that. If it's just like this thing, we're like, well, he's going to try. But I love that he keeps writing. I don't want to say it redeems it, but I love that he keeps writing it so that Reggie doesn't succeed.
Yeah.
He succeeds in 2, but she's shady shit. But like,
does he?
He makes sure. I know he makes sure to write that Reggie always fails. So 5. I have been quite a stickler during the dawn of digital cinema.
Aha.
Going back to like even going way back to Rodriguez and 28 Days Later, and good use of digital, and then also different kinds and what it can bring. And I will say, I remember seeing the trailer for 5 and just going, oh fuck, it looks like this, which is I did not see 5 in theaters. I just remember being shocked. So watching it now, and also I'm actually a little more forgiving about things, but still having watched this, I get it. Digital is way cheaper to shoot on. So maybe film wasn't an option, but and I don't want to slight people who put in their hard work to try to make this movie happen, but there are times where this looks like a fucking Asylum movie, if you're familiar with that production company.
Can I read you my third note?
Please do.
Now that the suckballs are CGI, I'm kind of heartbroken.
To be fair, there are some shots in 4 that are CGI, but
it didn't stand out to me the way these did. Like they always kind of looked like suckballs to me. This was the first one where I was like, oh, these are like new era suckballs, you know? Is a little, but don't let that paint my whole opinion of this movie.
Yeah, there is stuff. Yeah, I'm not gonna talk a lot of shit or anything, but also I didn't mention the balls stopped being scary for me in 4 as well. I mean,
they started being other things. They started being other things.
Scary is not the right word, but
I mean, intimidating or imposing.
No, in that first movie,
yeah,
it's practical, and there's stuff on a string or something being thrown down a hallway in reverse, but just that idea of like running in a hall and there's a ball, and whenever they cut to that close up of the background whirring behind, I mean, there is something otherworldly about it and strange about it, and that otherness, while isn't scary, it gets under my skin and I don't like it. And that is when I see Reggie kind of pinned to and it feels like there's a bunch of balls sewn to his costume at the end of 3. Like it starts. You had me with the gold ball coming out of the heads, but it started to lose its magic in 4, and then in 5, when you go full CG, the magic's fucking gone. And also the first time you see a giant sphere, it's CGI, so I see like on paper how that could be so like that should have been a moment for me to be like, oh fuck, I'm a Phantasm fan. It's been 4 movies, and now there's this giant sphere, and instead I'm just like, it's shot really brightly on digital, and it just looks like an Asylum movie with a big CGI ball. I got no feelings here. There's
okay. I don't share that experience. When I saw the giant suckball, I was like, what? I think the first introduction of the suckballs helped me transpose the key in my head, as it were.
See, I'd already they showed that shot in the trailer, so I already knew.
I didn't watch the trailer,
so you didn't know. Yeah. So I knew there was a big suckball in it, but then seeing it in CG.
Okay.
Let me say this though.
Yeah.
To throw this much new shit into the 5th movie, as far as the lore goes.
Okay.
On paper, I like a lot of it. In execution, I like most of it. It was just some other areas, like I didn't totally fall in love with, was it Chunk? And then I forget Dawn / I forget what her other name is.
Her other name is Jane.
Jane? Okay, I knew it was a J name. Yeah, I almost wish the movie could have spent more time, because let's just recap really quick. The opening of the movie, a good chunk of the movie is a fiction. Not just well, and then also it turns out isn't, but let me say this, it's not so much that it's a fiction, because it could be all made up, or it just could be another dimension that he's consciously getting to connect to. but when he wakes up being rescued by Chunk and I still want to say Jennifer, but Jane.
Yes.
That's the reality of 2, 3, and 4. Let's put it that way. So that's what I'm going to call the real world. I wish we got to spend more time, or we got to that more, because there's more payoff there, and instead we spent so much of the movie. I don't know. I don't want to say wasting my time, because there actually is considerable amount of value there, but if you're building up to the continuity of 2, 3, and 4, to just sort of be like, well, I'm awake and now I'm with Mike, and here's a shot of the outside world, and we're going to flash back a little bit to what happened, and then confrontation and it's sort of over. And I went, oh, that's it's interesting, because I think they were trying to make it. Definitely feels like they're trying to please fans. It's very much a fan film, or a movie for fans, but with visual effects that feel like a fan film sometimes. I
love that you're whispering.
I hate to say it, because I love 1 so much, and I don't want it to go down this asylum-looking path. And people people went to work in an office on computers and made this stuff. Like people,
Carlos.
Eddie, I have to lean forward, and I'm sorry. I just wish, so I do wish it spent more time, because we spent so much time in 2, 3, and 4. I wish we got to spend more time in that real world, the quote unquote real world. Having said that, I do think it's an interesting way to go, and also to mind fuck your audience, to be like, hey, this movie's going to operate on 3 different planes of existence, and it might take you a while to catch up to what we're fucking doing here. We're going to kind of inception you a bit. So we've got Reggie on the road right after the events of 4, and he's recounting that to Mike in the asylum, who's like, well, no, none of that fucking happened, you're a crazy man in an asylum. So there's this which is also fitting, because Mike spent some time in an asylum anyway. So we've got the flashbacks, which are not just flashbacks. They are machinations, apparently, of Reggie in the asylum. But also, the asylum reality isn't really real, because there's the real world of 2 and 3 and 4 and now 5, where he's been captured by the tall man. And it's been 10 years, and there's these. I love that this contraption he's in has these little metal rods that are suspiciously like little tuning rods, which really fucks it. But it allows the movie now, if the big tuning things take you through dimension, the little one in theory takes you through different consciousnesses, which is how we're bleeding between these 3. I'm all for all that. I like that we went there. And I really like the extra mindfuck that in the asylum level of consciousness, where Mike's like, what are you talking about? No, what? I don't, huh? I love that he's like, no. I had the same dream you had. Like this, I'm like, wait, what? Like what the fuck? And then we have like his flashback of what happened to him after 4, and I'm like, I want to see that movie of what happened to fucking Mike after. And we get like a scene, but this idea of the lucidity within that, I don't know. It the only time it lost me was at the end, when Reggie's dying with Mike and Jody at his side, but then Mike shows up, and like the world changes, and like the nurses are now like the fucking diggers. The transition, like that, I bet that read on page really well, but it was a moment for me to be like, okay, fuck, I guess this is happening now. Like there was however, Eddie, just like 4, the next day when I like reflected on it, I'm like, that's actually kind of dope. The fact that like the now first of all, is it the real world of 2 and 3 and 4 coming in? Because I like to think the idea that I'm just rambling on and on here, but the Asylum version of him dying obviously didn't happen. Although I won't begrudge any viewer, I won't begrudge them at all if they're like, no, that's the real ending. And right after that, this is the fever dream of the 3 friends together. This whole series is about death. This is Reggie's death. His friends are at his side. Nothing happened. It's all a fever dream. I don't like it, but I don't begrudge you because I feel like it could be there. But this idea of like, well, the fever dream asylum Reggie dies, but fuck it, there's a million dimensions. And now this, and then it's like, hey, buddy, come get in the car. The Hemi's back. And now we're going to drive off into this, not in the sunset, but
the desert.
Right. The only thing that I have to solidify the fact that I feel like, you know, the quote unquote real world just kind of destroys his asylum world, and he just keeps going because he's constantly being pulled through, is the fact that the end credit scene shows Chunk and Rocky like, oh, well, yeah, you wouldn't just make that shit up. So Chunk and Rocky, okay, whatever. It's a lot, Eddie. It's kind of a mess. It's kind of a mess when you're watching it. I was constantly just being like, huh, what? Fuck. And that's why I wonder, like, is this all heavily plotted and just kind of poorly executed? Or are you just making shit up? I don't know. But I enjoy it more as I reflect on it more than I try to understand it while it's happening. Even though in hindsight, I feel like I understand it. It's just, and here's my other note. Ready? No, it's a short one. It's a short one.
Yes.
This is your opportunity to end the series. And it didn't, like, it's still like, well, no, there's thousands of tall men in thousands of dimensions, and we're just going to go off into the sunset, and there's all these balls over the city. And I'm like, oh, so the book didn't close. Like, I wanted, like, after all these years, like, you don't want to, if you're going to make a movie that pleases the fans, another thing you should do is like end it. Like really end it. And this is sort of an ending as far as like emotional kind of catharsis. But like, if we're going to keep playing with this lore, like really fucking end it. And now we can't because Angus Scrimm died like right before the movie came out. Yeah. And you can't really make these without him. That'd be insane.
No, I don't want
a matter of like disrespect or anything. Like he is so, not just his performance, like his character is so integral. It is us hunting the tall man. You can't recast him. You can't do it. So in that sense that like, well, did I get emotional catharsis? Yeah. So them riding off into the sunset to like fight another day and take the fight to him? Sure. If the franchise has always been every movie ends with, fuck you, let's do another one, even though we don't know we're going to do another one or not, at least this one ends with like, we didn't close the book, just like we've never closed the book.
I have never wanted to put a suckball in your head more.
Why? What did I say that was
just so... because, just to relieve the tension, maybe.
No, but
Giancarlos, you are so tense right now.
I'm invested in these
and that's
levels.
That's kind of wonderful, but I'm so sad for you.
Fuck you! Why are you? Because you're watching. What about my? Nothing was sad about that.
No. Nothing was sad. I'm sad. No, just because this is a case where I feel like I kind of wish I could have granted you my brain or my sensory apparatus to watch this movie with, because everything you brought up, I mean, again, only saw it once, but so did you. So, or did you watch it twice?
No, I wanted to.
Okay.
Well, I didn't want to. Because like,
oh my God. Okay. That's why I want to give you my sensory apparatus. Because
but then afterwards, I'm like, actually, I do want to go back. Like like it's funny how I really was kind of somewhat not thrilled with 4 and 5, but then afterwards, like a day or two later, I'm like, you know what? I kind of want to go watch 4 and 5 again. Like,
okay.
Yeah.
It's funny to me that Yeah, to hear you mention 4 and 5 in the same breath that way, like they almost kind of go hand in hand in a way, which on some levels I think I agree with, but not the way you mean. Let me just go through some of my, just to give you kind of like an idea. I need to like prime the pump, as it were, to get you kind of in my headspace how I was watching this, because I gave you my first 3 lines. My first,
you sure did.
Which were very, I don't know.
They were whammies.
They sure were. My very next line is Reg's reunion with Mike. And that's all I could write. And I put a plus by it. Okay. Just because I might I might cry now, but just to watch how happy he was to see Mike, even in the sanitarium or whatever it is that he's in, outside on the bench, and just see the reunion did something to me, because I'm watching Reggie finally. I mean, what's one thing we didn't mention is that Reggie is, I guess, supposed to age. I always got a sense that he was supposed to be older, even older in 2, and that the movies that followed, he's just catching up with the actors, catching up with the character Reggie, so that we see him in the state he is. It's like, oh, there's no makeup necessary at all at this point. He's just that age. And just to see this weathered, and that's not the nicest thing to say about a person's face or the way they look or whatever, but I mean, just there's something different about his face. He doesn't have that youthful vigor that he had in 79, but he's still there. And just to see through that visage that is shifted naturally, this spirit, this connection that takes me back to the first movie, and this recognition of this young boy who is the same boy, that alone, I cried. So there's that.
That actually makes me happy in a weird way, because I remember thinking, this is, I guess I'm totally wrong, but I remember thinking, I think Eddie's gonna hate these sequels.
No.
And I'm very happy that you didn't.
No, yeah. Let me tell you why. No, because then later he meets Dawn, and I just wrote, the fireplace is back. And then Tall Man shows up, and I wrote very, like, I was so invested, I didn't want to not look at the screen, so I just wrote little lines. I just wrote, Tall Man still got it.
He does.
Because he came on screen, and I was just like, again, more than ever, because 2016 comes around, and you're just like, he is visibly kind of like been aging like throughout these movies and everything like that, and that's not a read. It's just like he's older now. It hasn't affected his ability to kind of like deliver, not necessarily, not always the same imposing figure, but I have no problem believing he's the same figure, just kind of evolving. And now to see him in this state, and just again, there's something, so maybe the HD, like the digital of it all, the clarity with which we can see what's going on behind their eyes, it gains me kind of like a new access to these people who I already feel so close to because of the 4 movies I've been through with them, or in Mike's case, the 3. Just to see, well, 3.5. He's in the flashback, but up to. But so yeah, there's something about just kind of recognizing that same person that I found incredibly moving. It gave the whole thing a symmetry, and I was just kind of like, I'm already more on board than I was for 4, because it seems to be moving a little bit more quickly. It seems to not necessarily be a complete return to 1, but there's elements of that. There's elements of 2. There's elements of 3, and there are elements of 4. And I feel like it even, I don't know, retconned, but just kind of solved some of the problems of 4 for me. Watching 4 again, knowing 5 is coming, is going to make it so much easier the next time. I wrote, this sequel is really bringing back the what the fuck of it all, in terms of what's reality and what's the lie. And I love that. How the fuck did they achieve that horse kill? Was that digital? Was that CGI? It looked like a real horse to me. It bothered
a real
me.
Horse, yeah.
Okay.
He lays down.
I just want, nobody lays down and blood, and I'm like, oh god, no. Okay, so it bothered me. You know me with animals. I don't horses. Horses. But I wrote giant suckball with 3 big all exclamation marks. I'm getting tired. Exclamation points in all caps. So I was excited. I wrote Reg determining. Okay, this is where I differ as far as my perception of what was going on with you. Because Reg is sitting there back in the facility with Mike, and he's determining how he'd like to go. He's talking about like, would I rather go just here, immobilized, like, you know, like completely out of control of my fate, or would I rather go like guns a-blazing, you know, that kind of thing. And as he's doing that, the second he does that, Mike disappears. And I'm like, because I thought, oh no, are they going to do the thing where like this has all been a hallucination, but it's all been Reggie's hallucination? Please don't do that to me, because you really could. And then the second Mike disappears, when he does that, I'm like, something in me said, this is not like him hallucinating. He didn't just hallucinate that Mike disappeared and Mike is really there going, Reggie, you know, or anything like that. No, this proves that this is, I don't have to wonder anymore, like, is this reality? It's like, no, they are all reality. And he's for some reason, he's navigating through multiple dimensions in a way he never did before. So I picked up on that.
He's in
I was
the
really
machine.
grateful for it.
He's been
yeah. But again, like, I didn't feel like there was any kind of definitive reality at all because of this. I felt like they're all in an odd way. Also, I mean, you know, like Marvel and DC have given us multiverses, so I feel like they can exist and there can still be a connection between them, and there can be like a blurred line sometimes if like something's going on, like fucking tuning forks and dimensional forks and all that kind of thing.
Just to clarify, I'm not saying that there is a definitive reality, just that we have spent all this time in the reality of 2, 3, 4 and this. Like,
but have we? I have to go back and watch the movies again.
Though, right? But
that's,
for the most part, no, I feel like that's what we've been doing.
But because I really don't feel that it isn't what we've been doing, but I don't feel well, that is what we've been doing. I don't know. I legitimately don't know.
Reggie in the asylum with Mike has to, I mean, obviously we've talked about how it is, but also Jody's there at the end. So clearly this is a different thing. It's a reality that Jody's alive in.
Okay, we'll get there. I wrote, holy shit, the lady in lavender's back. Maybe I'm just really easy to please.
And she gives it her all in that scene. She's fucking dope.
Oh my God. I was just like, thank God. Like, who? And I was so excited. I was like, who else is coming? Like, I was so just sitting there just going, oh, fanboy heart. Boom, 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 boom. And so that was great. Okay, now I love Chunk. I wrote, so sad I only get like a half hour more. I checked the time signature and said, so sad I only get like a half hour more of him if he survives. And I'm like, God damn it. But then I just wrote in all caps because I was watching him, and just his takes at like what was going on. I was just like, oh my God, okay, talk about like charisma and an immediate ability to just kind of get me on your side. Like, this character, more than any of the other characters that have been introduced like thus far, like, I have never been so immediately on board with somebody where I'm just like, I want to go with you. Just based off of your take of what's going on. Because another thing I wrote, it was a question. It was like, have we, with this triad, you know, whatever form Jody takes, and Mike and Reggie, have any of the members of this triad have ever come in contact with someone who was already several steps ahead of them? Like, I thought Liz, she was kind of on the same page with Mike, and then the kid, he had his realm down, but he didn't really know what was going on beyond that. He just knew lurkers and shit like that. Didn't seem to know Tall Man. And then, at least as far as my memory can serve, and if I'm wrong, sorry. But and then even when we came across Tanisha and Rocky, I thought they were there because they had been there and they knew what was going on, but they both seemed kind of like, what is that orb, thing? So I'm like, okay. And then I don't remember. Oh, Jennifer was working for the enemy, so it doesn't count. So nobody really kind of like was ahead of them. So the fact that like finally we get somebody who gets what they get and knows even more was refreshing to me. I was waiting for it, actually. I wrote a note about it like about an hour before, and I was just kind of like, oh my God, so we only have a half hour of Chunk. I love that he called him Baldy. Then we get the video game apocalypse. And I'm sorry, when they came out and just did that, like, almost the things that fly, drones. I mean, just like get like that quasi drone shot through, the CGI apocalypse. I was totally on board. I was like, what? We're in a video game now? Totally. I can't explain why. I just was. I wrote. This was one. Yeah.
I wish I could join you, but
sorry. I was so like. I get it. I get it.
I hate when the level of effects pull me out. I want to be on the thing, and I just couldn't be on the thing.
Okay, cool. I didn't care. Big minus for me, but it's like a minor thing. But I mean, I have to say it's a big minus, and then it's minor. I whatever. It doesn't ruin the experience for me. But the fact that here we've just introduced that Jane is Dawn, and she gets kidnapped and needs to be rescued. Fuck that shit. But the fact that Chunk is the hero, I was just so excited. I cheered out loud. I screamed. I put my hands over my head, and I just went, yeah! And then when they reconnect and they're just kind of like walking along the road together, when we reestablish Mike and Reggie, and they're talking like it's all going to kind of close up now, and I'm just going to like, yes, I want their adventures to be real. And then Jodie shows up, and I'm just like, yes, this is, oh my God, what a great way to end it. Like I get them all back and they get each other. That's the thing. That's the thing. And I just wrote beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. And then Chunk lives, and I'm like, good, I didn't want him to die.
Well, here's what's fun is we that first movie at its core is that trio, right? Well, at its core, it's about grieving and death. But that theme seems to kind of go away, which is again why I like the first movie so much. I mean, the theme it's to varying degrees, but like it's never the way it is in that fucking first movie. Anyway, but when we get to have the three of them back together again at the end,
yeah.
But then also, like, wasn't Rocky like one of the best additions in 3?
I'm not done.
Hang on, can I just have my thought, you asshole? And you like Chunk so much, so isn't it neat that like we get to end with like the 3? But also like some of the better editions, so now it just becomes like the 5. Like it's neat that it's right
totally
sunset with the classics, but also the new. It's nice. Anyway, go on.
So yeah, I wrote Rocky. I'm already over the moon at this point. And I won't say my final note yet because I do want to address something I didn't take notes on because I was too busy. It was okay, and I might cry. No, but it was just there was something in just seeing them all in the car together, driving off, just the 3 of them first, where I was just kind of, I'm not looking for like, well, how can this get any better? What's going to happen next? I'm just in this moment. And I was already so happy. And then we get to the deathbed for Reggie. And I see Mike on one side and I see Jodie on the other side. And they're just letting him go. Oh my God. I thought it was so fucking beautiful because somewhere in some realm, this is happening.
Yeah.
And somewhere in some realm, I felt like the last shot they got of him in the car, of Reggie in the back seat, felt like he was dying there too. So there was some kind of like strange symmetry. Maybe he just went to sleep, but I felt like there's some strange connection between what's happening right now, and it gives me it's been chaos up until now, and it's been a great kind of chaos that I really, really enjoy. And now it's almost like everything's kind of settling. It feels kind of like not that everything's all right, but that because some things are connecting and happening simultaneously, like there are some inescapable I don't know, some inescapable like roadblocks that kind of transcend dimension. And the fact that the ones we were shown were Reggie dying, the two that we were shown were Reggie, my opinion, passing away with his loved ones, was really gratifying. I was sobbing. I mean, I'm crying now, but I was sobbing. I picked up a tissue and I just wept into it. And I just watched. Also, I don't know, like there is this outside of the movie experience where I get to see these three guys who got together to just put this little, piece of art together back in 1977. And here they are again, and like regarding this thing that they created together, that they built, and the fact that the filmmaker, the original filmmaker, is still there. He didn't write it alone, but he collaborated on it. He got his input, and I felt it. It was beyond gratifying for me. It felt transcendental. It felt like fiction bleeding into reality, so that felt in keeping with Phantasm. And the last thing I wrote at the very end of all of it was, "This is how you reward fandom." So that's how I felt about part 5.
I'm glad you had that, and I'm not a total downer on it, but yeah, because again, I said the emotional feelings I felt of it were more satisfying than the plotty bits that were left at the end.
Sure.
I'm glad you mentioned Reggie in the backseat though, because I remember feeling something in the backseat where I'm like, is there, the way he's seated and the way his face is right now, there's something here, right?
Yeah.
I'm happy just because I for some reason I really thought you weren't going to connect to this.
Oh my God, you were wrong.
I would. It seems like you might have enjoyed 4 and 5 more than me.
5 certainly. 4, we'll see. I think we're on the same page with 4.
Yeah. But I'm still not sure if I would buy a box set, because I don't know how often I revisit the sequels. And especially after this long, even before there was a 5th one, I never owned 2 through 4. There's definitely strengths and there's definitely fun things, but I mean, there is gold in fucking 1. There is something fucking magical in 1 that I will always want to revisit. There's a reason I have a fucking signed poster. I love 1.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's funny actually. One of the thematic, if death and grief is such a big element of 1, it's fun that they leaned into it more in 5, where I feel like they kind of got away from it in 2 and 3 and 4. We're still playing in graveyards and mausoleums, but it's
different.
Not the same anymore. Yeah.
Yeah.
And even in 5, I mean, we're going into it with Reggie on his deathbed, but I mean that element is gone when it's this CGI red landscape along cliffs, and the tall man's explaining how there's thousands of tall men, and it's like this big row of Matrix. Like, no, but like the theme of that first movie is gone in that moment. Like, it's something else. It is dimensions and aliens and world takeovers and conquering dimensions, and it's it's not necessarily a bad thing, but that what I go to for 1 is the magic is in 1, that magic sauce.
Okay.
Yeah, I definitely probably revisit these again. I don't know if I'd own a 5 film box set.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's fun. Yeah, I really went in thinking I was gonna have to be defending this shit from you, and instead you're like trying to emotionally explain things to me, and I'm like, oh,
No, just my, not even explain, but from my
not
vantage
explain.
point,
Yeah,
that's my experience. Yeah.
yeah.
Did
Yeah,
you rank them?
I didn't.
Oh, okay.
I don't even know if I could because there's so many different strengths to each one, and each one's such a weird, different beast.
Hmm.
Like it's weird to put like I don't know 3 or 5 above 2 because but 2 works in this way, but 3 works in this way. I don't know. I don't know if I could. Do you? If you have a
Okay.
ranking, lay them out for me. But
I totally did.
Oh yeah, do it.
Okay. My ranking for anybody who's interested. My number 5 is Oblivion. I think that's pretty clear. Just again, first time watches for all of these, except for the first one, which I did get to see twice, but I knew after watching them just once what my ranking was going to be. But yeah, just the experience of getting through it. It might be different in the future, but I don't know if that'll change my ranking. Number 4 is Phantasm II, just because of what I said, like 50-50. Half the time I'm like, yeah, and half the time I'm like, so there's that. 3 is 3 because of all the reasons I said. Like it just got me on board, and even when it was lacking, I felt like the good outweighed the not the good, but just like what engrossed me outweighed whatever made me go, you know. 2 is Ravager. Yeah, because I mean, you know what I just did. And the first one is 1, of course, because especially going back to it, it's wonderful to watch it with all of those sequels behind it now. Like I was so looking forward to it today because I knew I was only going to have time for one. Because I had another pod I had to do earlier. So I'm like, fuck, I'm just going to watch one again. Well, fuck. Like, oh, poor me. And it happened all over again to me. It was like, it was just like,
dude, I get the same juice from it every time I watch it.
And yet there's going to be more juice. There's going to be.
Yeah. I've been watching it for like over 20 years. So like you'll get more juice.
And I totally got that sense from it when I saw it the first time. I was just like, I'm owning this. I am going to watch it and I'm going to develop theories. And I'm going to develop new kind of insights. There's going to be things that I just kind of thought, oh, cool. That I'm going to be like, no, now I feel like I get it. You know.
I mean, I've been watching it for 21 years and I still got something different out of it this time.
Yay!
So I mean, there's not many movies you could say that about. So also, if it's worth when it first came out on Blu-ray, I got it as a Christmas gift.
Yeah.
And about a year later, that same edition was put out in a steelbook. So if you're interested, if you care about steelbooks or not, there is a steelbook edition of the first movie. I think the 5-film box set's out of print, and I think in European territories it was released by Arrow. I don't know who did it in the US.
Okay. I'll look it up. I'll do my research.
Yeah. Do I have anything else on 5? No. Yeah, I it's weird. I have this weird, like I'm of two minds. Like on the one hand, it's a beautiful idea of the 3 of them in the car riding off into the sunset. And then on the other hand, though, but it's like we're living to fight another day, and I'm like, no, but I just want the fight to be over. You know, like I need.
Well, they're going to the cold. He hates the cold.
So that clearly will fix everything. I don't know. It's just, like I don't get to see the tall man be defeated. And
they've been fighting so long.
His plan to get foiled. In fact, not only is his plan not foiled, and not only is he defeated, but they have really confirmed that there's like thousands of dimensions that all have, and you're like, okay, so maybe the point is like it's happening everywhere, and fuck it, you can't defeat him, but at least the 3 of you are together again. I don't fucking know.
No, but it's like I said before, like there's an omnipresent evil and you can't ever ultimately destroy it. Like it will always come back and there will always be other people there to fight it. I just feel like what the 5th movie gives them is Like, you know what? You've done it. Like, we're gonna close the book on these chronicles. He's still gonna be there, and other people are gonna have to fight him. He's gonna go after other people who have like connections. Like we know Liz had a connection and whatever. So there's gonna be other people who have like something that he wants. And that's great. That's great. But at the same time, they've done their time. So now it's like time to go to the cold where he hates it, where he might not be able to get to them, and they can just kick back and actually kind of like relax and breathe. It's very Dark Knight Rises.
See, I didn't get the impression. That's an interesting pull. I didn't get the impression that they were going to the cold because he can't get them there. The impression I got was just that no matter where they go, he's going to come. But when they go there, they have an advantage now. It's not to escape him, is what I thought.
And I mean, it's not. I didn't feel like escape. Like I just felt. I'm so serene. I was just like, they're just making their peace with it. They're just kind of saying. I mean, they're doing. That's also again the interweaving of like reality and fiction for me. I'm just like, they're saying goodbye.
Sure.
They're saying goodbye to
absolutely
this framework, and that means releasing. And there was something really beautiful about that I totally dug.
Did you sit through the credits? Because the one thing I was trying to sort of wrap my head around is it looked like, it's red and then like black of these characters, and a lot of it's them like shooting people. And I'm watching some of it going, this isn't from the movie we just watched. This is them like on the road doing the fight, and then partially through it would cut to what looked like footage I'd already seen. So it was a weird mix. But but I like the idea that it still gave me them. It gave me a little bit of footage of them on the road, continuing to fight a bit.
Sure.
One thing I think I just gotta say before we wrap this up is when you watch that first movie, and I talked about how like an unconventional kind of movie it is, like for these ideas and these things that put together on paper and put on film is such a strange thing. Even more strange is when you look at just that first movie. What a strange movie to turn it into a franchise.
He didn't want to do it originally.
Yeah, well, it's Beastmaster didn't go well for him, and then Universal noticed that, like, hey, over the years that those Phantasm tapes are doing pretty well.
Yeah. And he was like, it's an isolated story. There is no sequel. And then he racked his brain and he came up with an idea he liked.
And he kept revisiting it, and that's great. But and even though we've spent over 3 hours talking about these movies and the sequel specifically, and I will say this out loud, I will return to the sequels. There's a lot I like in them.
Yeah.
But my heart with one. Like I'm with Don Coscarelli. Like, no, that first movie. That at that time, that only movie, like, fuck.
Yeah. Exceptional. It's singular.
It is, which is why I only own it. You know what I mean?
Totally.
And then just here's my parting thought. It's just the tiniest little thought. I love that when Reggie pulls up to the house and Jody is playing guitar. I love that Reggie's ice cream truck has these like side little nooks that have dips in them, and that he jams his guitar in there. Like that, he's that kind of guy. Oh, let's see that hole? That's my guitar hole. Like in my ice cream truck. I dig that. So that when he gets out of the truck, he literally runs. He just kind of scoops it as he keeps running, because that's my fucking guitar spot, man. I like that.
Me too.
Yeah. I can't rank them, but one's at the top, and four is kind of near the. I've tried to rank them while we're talking, and every time I want to put one somewhere, the strength of another one's in a different area. Like I want to put 4 towards the bottom, but then I'm like, well, then 2, but no, but 3, and then fuck it.
Ranking felt natural for me. It was very easy. I didn't struggle like you are, so don't bother. It's fine. Don't.
But one's sublime. Anyway, there you go.
Yes, it is.
It's been fun. It's been a fun 3.5 hours. So
holy shit. Thank you.
Fucking thank you for liking them, because I was really convinced that this was going to be a bummer of a video for me.
No, my heart.
Yay.
Yeah, totally.
All right. Well, thank you for joining me. You can find us on the Instagrams and all that. I'll have the links coming up at the end. Bye, Eddie.
Bye, John Carlos.
This is the end. No, it isn't. Like, yeah, we'll be back for something else. Bye.